One day, a boy was with his classmates when suddenly a magic circle appeared in the classroom. In an instant, everything changed for the group of second-year high school students. The boy became much stronger, but instead of becoming a hero, he turned into an assassin. Suddenly, when everyone opened their eyes, they were shocked to find themselves in a completely different place. A man appeared and welcomed them to his palace, explaining that they had been summoned from a distant world. His daughter stood behind him, while the boy looked at them in confusion. The king then revealed that he had brought them there to choose one of them to be granted the title of hero, hoping they could defeat the Demon King. Everyone was stunned to hear the words hero, summon, and Demon King, and they wondered what on earth was going on. The king introduced the world as Morgan and informed them that it had 4 main continents, each inhabited by humans, elves, beastmen, and demons. The king went on to explain that their country had the largest human population and was currently under threat of a demon invasion. This was why they were chosen as candidates for the hero title, and he hoped one of them could slay the Demon King to bring peace to the land. After that, an old man appeared and revealed that only one of them could become the destined hero, but the others would also play important roles. He then explained how they could discover their own abilities. The students were unsure if the old man was serious, but he instructed them to repeat after him. When he said status open, they echoed his words, and suddenly, a stat panel appeared in front of each of them. As they examined their stats and occupations, the boy noticed that he was labeled as an assassin, and his stealth skill was already maxed out. He also had 1,800 HP and 1,200 attack power, and he wondered if those were good numbers compared to the others. Everyone excitedly examined their stat panels, but Akira was deep in thought, realizing this new world was full of dangers. Just then, the boy next to him called his name and asked if he had checked his panel. Akira nodded, but he couldn't remember this boy's name, so he asked him what his occupation was. The boy replied that he was a wind mage, and then asked Akira about his occupation. When Akira said he was an assassin, the boy smiled and remarked that it suited him since he always seemed to disappear during class, joking that they might call him a ninja. Hearing that, Akira smiled, remembering how he had won every game of hide and seek as a child. It really did feel like a natural ability for him. He then noticed that the status bar seemed to reflect their personalities from Japan. Skills like arithmetic and negotiation appeared on his panel, skills he had honed while bargaining for groceries at the market. The boy next to Akira asked him who he thought had the potential to become the hero. Akira glanced at the other students and said that it seemed like Sato Tsukasa had the best chance. He had a good-looking face, an excellent academic record, was great at sports, and was even the head of the student council. Just then, the old man instructed them to look at the crystal ball in front of him and ordered everyone to form a line and touch it one at a time. He explained that it was a magical tool that would display their status bars for everyone to see. One by one, the students touched the crystal ball and their statuses were revealed to the public. Akira thought it was a bit risky to show their status in front of everyone. When he saw a girl's status with only 180 HP, he was surprised by how weak she seemed compared to him. He realized he was almost 10 times stronger than her. Concerned about revealing his own status, Akira decided he couldn't let anyone see it. At that moment, his stealth skill activated, allowing him to hide his status from being displayed. After that, Sato stepped forward to display his status bar. Akira thought that if Sato's stats were stronger than his, it might be safe to reveal his own stats as well. But when Sato's status was shown, his occupation was hero, yet he only had 200 HP and 800 attack power. Akira's eyes widened in shock. His title as an assassin made him much stronger than the hero. He couldn't understand why he was so much more powerful. The old man then explained that the average power level in this world was around 100, and even a skilled warrior would have about 500 attack power. However, the hero had 800 attack power, which was considered impressive, significantly more than the hero, which left him even more puzzled and concerned. The king appeared and confidently declared that with the hero and his friends, they could defeat the Demon King without any problems. Akira, still in shock, stood silently, thinking about everything he had just witnessed. He began to feel uneasy as he looked at the others. The old man then announced that they would now help everyone prepare their suited equipment, asking them to follow him. As Akira walked behind the group, he noticed something unusual, a camera on the ceiling. A sense of foreboding washed over him, making him feel like something unexpected was about to happen. Akira went to his room and collapsed onto the bed, deep in thought. He wondered if his role was just to be a background character for the hero, and if that were the case, he could accept it. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play, especially with his strong negotiation skills that allowed him to understand what others might be planning. He realized that as long as he stayed away from that crystal ball and kept hiding, he could remain unnoticed. As he lay there, pondering, Akira suddenly sat up. He realized that ever since he had been separated from the group and waited quietly for his chance, he had been given his own room, making it easier for him to sneak around. He also noticed that there were no cameras in his room, confirming that it was truly his space. He began to wonder what the king was hiding. Feeling that his current outfit would attract too much attention, he changed into an assassin's cloak. Silently, he sneaked out of his room and began exploring the castle, determined to uncover the king's secrets. While moving stealthily through the corridors, Akira overheard a conversation between the king and his daughter, Maria. The king was asking her about the students, and she assured him that they were doing well, and none of them had noticed anything unusual. She mentioned that the students didn't realize they were being used, especially since they came from a world without demons. The king then ordered her to continue with her plan and to ensure that none of the students entered the gallery. He added that he would send the Knights Captain to train them tomorrow. Maria bowed and agreed to follow his instructions. As Maria was leaving, Akira quickly hid, making sure she wouldn't notice him. He stayed completely still, blending into the shadows as she passed by without seeing him. After that, Akira went into the library where the king was sitting in front of him. He was looking at him from behind. He thought if he should attack him since he was unguarded. But he thought in this way he would never figure out his plan, why he summoned them and what danger was awaiting them. So he wondered if he should really finish him off right now. And that day he decided to come back to his room silently. But now he thought not killing him at that point was one of the biggest regrets up until now. Meanwhile, outside the castle, Queen Maria was suddenly struck by an arrow. She collapsed to the ground, realizing that the arrow was coated with a tranquilizing poison. As her vision blurred, an elf approached her, bow in hand, with a cold smile. The elf looked down at Maria and mockingly asked, "Why are you still alive?" Everyone was sitting at dining tables eating their food when hero Tsukasa stood up and asked for their attention. Confused, everyone turned to look at him. Tsukasa shared his thoughts, saying that they might all be wondering why they were summoned to this world with such great powers. He asked if they were ready to use their strength to help the people of this world by defeating the Demon Lord. Hearing this, everyone showed their excitement and cheered for him. Meanwhile, Akira sat silently, feeling annoyed. He thought it was foolish to trust the king and the princess so easily. What if the story about the Demon Lord was a complete lie? Despite his doubts, Akira was relieved that his stealth was still active, so no one could see him. While the other students were eagerly talking about saving the people, Akira began to consider whether he should try to escape the castle on his own. After their meal, the students went to the training area, which was even bigger than their schoolyard. Suddenly, a man in royal armor appeared and introduced himself as Saran Mizrae, the Knight Commander of the Reddest Kingdom and the last line of defense. He was accompanied by Vice Commander Zeal Asti. Mizrae seemed a bit embarrassed about his introduction, but Zeal insisted that Mizrae needed to introduce himself properly or else people might underestimate him. While everyone admired the friendly behavior of the two knights, Akira observed them with a serious expression. Mizrae informed the students that they would have a chance to explore an underground dungeon in a month, and they needed to train daily until then. Students were curious if they could become strong enough in just 1 month. Mizrae explained that if they didn't get stronger with the training, the issue would be with them, not the training. He mentioned that the knights took pride in being the kingdom's last line of defense, and expressed his belief in their potential, given that they were summoned from another world with excellent abilities. Tsukasa looked a bit motivated while Akira remained cautious, determined not to be easily swayed. He had his stealth skill activated, and when their eyes met, he smiled awkwardly, realizing that Mizrae might not have seen him due to his skill. Deciding he wasn't really interested in following the king's orders, Akira began to walk away. Mizrae told Zeal to take care of the training area and to give the students half of the usual training. As Mizrae started to leave, he noticed Akira and stopped him, asking where he was planning to go. Akira was surprised and asked Mizrae if he could actually see him. Mizrae confirmed that he could, and mentioned that he had very special eyes. For punishment, Akira joked that he was ready to be boiled or grilled for skipping training. Mizrae responded that those were quite dangerous ideas and asked if Akira had something more peaceful in mind. He then asked again where Akira was planning to go, assuring him that he wouldn't order him to return to training, so it was better for Akira to be honest about his plans. Standing there, Akira decided it was pointless to keep hiding things from Miss Ray, so he admitted that he was going to the library. Miss Ray then asked if His Majesty had forbidden them from entering the library and what Akira planned to do there. Akira explained that he wanted to learn more about the world and its everyday life, including skills and magic. Miss Ray asked if the skill Akira used earlier was stealth and asked its level. Akira replied that it was at max level, which shocked Miss Ray, who couldn't believe it. He then asked about Akira's other skills, and Akira said most were at level 1 and he didn't know how to improve them. Miss Ray offered to teach Akira, but Akira gave a strange look, leading Miss Ray to think that he disliked the idea. Miss Ray explained that there were no books about skills in the library since His Majesty kept all important books under his own care. Akira sighed at this information, and Miss Ray noticed. When asked if he had already visited the library, Akira denied it and said that it was nothing. Akira then asked what Miss Ray would want in exchange for teaching him, as he knew nothing is truly free. Miss Ray told him that he wanted Akira to teach him about the real world in exchange for teaching Akira about this world. They would trade information about the respective worlds. Akira agreed, and they shook hands, sealing their deal. Suddenly, Zeal called out to Miss Ray, loudly expressing how long he had been searching for him. He grabbed Miss Ray by his clothes and said they still had some work left to do, so they needed to return right away. Miss Ray, smiling, said farewell to Akira. Akira was taken aback by the scene while Zeal apologized for Miss Ray's behavior, explaining that Miss Ray had a bad habit of doing this. Akira assured him that it was fine. Akira mentioned that Miss Ray had shared some interesting stories and asked if it would be okay for him to visit the Knights Barracks next time. Zeal smiled and said they would be glad to have him. He added that the next commander should have finished his work by then, but Miss Ray joked that it would only happen if Akira didn't disappear like today. Zeal then pulled Miss Ray away, reminding him that they had overtime work waiting for them. As they walked away, Zeal remarked that it was rare to see Miss Ray genuinely smiling. Miss Ray confirmed that it had been a while since he had smiled like that, and Zeal asked what they had been talking about, and Miss Ray said it was just some casual conversation about their respective worlds. Miss Ray explained that he found it hard to believe Akira's stories about a metal box that moved on its own, a piece of metal that flew through the air, how news traveled instantly, and a small device that allowed people to talk in real time from far away. Akira had said these things were created by something called science, not magic. After a sip of his drink, Miss Ray added that Akira mentioned they came from a place called Japan. Hearing the name Japan, Zeal noted that it was the same place where the first hero was summoned and the same country mentioned in their documents. Miss Ray also mentioned that he believed Akira was hiding his true power since his stealth skill was at the max level. Zeal was extremely shocked by this. He said he had heard that level 9 was the highest in their world, but he had never seen anyone exceed level 7. Miss Ray agreed, noting that it was often easier for people from other worlds to break these limits. Zeal wondered why His Majesty hadn't given Akira much attention. Miss Ray explained that it might be because Akira used stealth to avoid the crystal ritual, calling him a clever and crafty boy. He then asked Zeal if he thought Akira was a particularly outstanding talent. Zeal asked if Miss Ray was planning to bring Akira to their camp. Miss Ray smiled and said that if Akira ever realized His Majesty's true nature, it might be acceptable to share their thoughts with him. He decided that starting tomorrow, he would personally train Akira. Not just basic survival skills for the dungeon, but advanced training to help him make the most of his skills and become a true assassin. The next day at the training ground, Tsukasa was sweating heavily from his intense workout. He looked at Akira with resentment, thinking about how Akira had always avoided him in kindergarten, elementary school, and even during the first year of middle school. Despite Akira being popular, he had never interacted with Tsukasa and didn't even remember his name. Tsukasa remembered how Akira would always drift away and disappear before anyone could notice, and now he was doing the same in Morgan. In his mind, Tsukasa called Akira a selfish jerk who lacked cooperation and disrupted the unity of the group. Suddenly, he saw Commander Miss Ray talking to Akira with a smile, and Tsukasa couldn't help but feel frustrated that Miss Ray was giving Akira so much attention. As Tsukasa was lost in his thoughts, Princess Maria appeared with a glass of water and handed it to him. She praised him for his hard work and training. Tsukasa thanked her, blushing, and drank the water. He calmed himself down, reminding himself that he was a hero. Determined, Tsukasa resolved to train harder and become stronger than Akira and Miss Ray could ever imagine. 1 month later, the students were taken out of the castle where a large crowd had gathered to see them. Miss Ray encouraged them to puff out their chests, saying they were brave heroes of the people. As they walked surrounded by soldiers for their protection, Tsukasa waved to the crowd. Meanwhile, Akira was annoyed by how quickly Tsukasa had adapted to the role of hero. Activating his stealth skill, Akira slipped away from the group. As he walked, he noticed a small girl in a cloak. He greeted her and she looked surprised to hear his voice. He asked why she was glaring at them and reassured her that he wouldn't hand her over to the knights. The girl then asked if he knew about the sacrifices made to summon those who are now praised as heroes. Akira was shocked and said he hadn't heard anything like that. The girl then said he would find the answers and hoped they would meet again. With that, she walked away, leaving Akira with a sense of curiosity. Akira and Tsukasa stood in front of Miss Ray, who had a map spread out on the table. Miss Ray informed them that their next destination was the Cantonin Dungeon. He explained that there was one dungeon on each of the 4 continents in Morrigan, and each one was named after the continent where it was located, just like the Cantonin continent they saw first. Tsukasa asked if the knights would accompany them in the dungeon. With a cup of coffee in his hand, Miss Ray smiled and said he was looking forward to witnessing their bravery. After entering the dungeon, they quickly encountered traps. When one of the traps was triggered, a knight shouted for a medic and chaos erupted. Watching this, Akira remarked that he never expected the knights to be such a burden. Miss Ray, standing behind him, laughed and agreed. Despite the initial chaos, they managed to progress smoothly through the first 40 floors of the dungeon. By this time, everyone's stats had improved compared to when they were first summoned. After clearing the 30th floor, the group felt confident, laughing and thinking that the dungeon wasn't as difficult as they had expected. As they proceeded to another floor, a trap was triggered and suddenly a swarm of rats surrounded them. Zeal quickly ordered the knights to hold the line and form a defensive formation. Akira noticed that many of the knights had lost their will to fight, and he asked Miss Ray if they should retreat. Miss Ray stepped forward, raised his sword, and cast a spell called Heavenly Blade, creating a path in front of them. The knights were shocked by his display of power. Zeal then commanded everyone to run back to the surface immediately. They began the retreat with Tsukasa leading the way. However, as they neared the surface, they encountered even more monsters waiting for them. Suddenly, Tsukasa remembered the smoke bombs the princess had given him, which could repel monsters. He quickly took one out and shouted for everyone to fall back. As he threw the smoke bomb, the monsters started to flee. He then told the group that he didn't have many left and warned them not to stray too far. Taking the lead, he instructed everyone to follow closely behind him, and they did as he led them forward. Meanwhile, Zeal and one of the knights cast a powerful spell together, combining Blaze Shot and Wind Bullet. Seeing the strength of their magic, Akira wondered if the heroes were even necessary since the knights seemed strong enough on their own. Miss Ray then mentioned that it seemed the heroes had safely reached the upper floors. Zeal suggested that they should retreat now, pointing out that fighting multiple enemies at once was a bad match for an assassin. Although confused, Akira followed Zeal's lead and started running. As they were retreating, another trap was triggered. Akira asked what had happened, and Zeal explained that it was from the upper floor. Suddenly, a minotaur appeared in front of them. Zeal was shocked, wondering why a monster that usually only appeared deep in the dungeon was now on the upper floor. Akira noticed 2 knights standing helplessly in front of the minotaur, about to be attacked. He immediately ran toward the monster. The minotaur noticed him and tried to strike, but Akira jumped to avoid the attack. He then used his skill Quick Strike with his blades, but to his surprise, his blades couldn't pierce through the minotaur's tough body. He marveled at how hard it was, and suddenly, he was teleported 10 meters away from the monster. He was puzzled, trying to figure out what had happened. Meanwhile, a knight informed him that they were trying to break away from the monsters by using the last of the repellent smoke bombs. The plan seemed to be working since they hadn't been attacked afterward. However, just as they used the last bomb, a monster suddenly emerged from behind the smoke. Sano, one of the knights, tried to protect them by blocking the monster's cudgel with a sword, but he ended up crying in pain, unable to speak. Akira noticed Sano clutching his hand, realizing that not only was the sword broken, but it seemed like the bones in Sano's hand were shattered as well. Zeal shouted Akira's name and told him that the knights would handle the minotaur. He urged them to heal and retreat during that time. Tsukasa sat there with tears in his eyes, and Akira reassured him, saying he was tough for not passing out from the pain. But Tsukasa, determined, said that he had to protect his classmates because if he didn't, who would? Akira smiled and asked who would protect him, reminding him that a hero's purpose isn't just to protect others, but to use their powers to defeat Demon Lord, not to sacrifice themselves for others. Frustrated, Tsukasa asked who would protect the classmates then. Akira firmly replied that they should protect themselves, pointing out that they had all been trained for this battle. He told Tsukasa to take better care of his own body. Tsukasa, a bit stunned, looked at his trembling hands, repeatedly telling himself that he was the hero and that he had to save everyone. Akira noticed the situation was getting worse. Even though Tsukasa was well suited to be the student council president due to his leadership skills and sense of responsibility, Akira had never seen him so cornered before. Akira looked at the others and asked if there were any healers or exorcists among them. Two girls stepped forward. Hosoyama Shiori, who said she was a healer, and Ueno Yuki, who introduced herself as an exorcist. They asked what this had to do with Tsukasa. Akira told them he'd explain later and asked if Hosoyama could heal Tsukasa's broken arms. She agreed and immediately used her magic to heal him. Ueno then asked what she should do. Akira requested that she use Dispel Curse on Tsukasa, which confused her, but she cast the spell anyway. To their surprise, they discovered that Tsukasa had been cursed all along. Akira asked if Ueno could dispel it, but she admitted her first attempt failed and that she'd try again. Hosoyama mentioned she needed more time to fully heal Tsukasa's arms, but she was confident she could manage it. Akira realized it was all up to them now. As they worked, Akira moved forward and observed the knights battling the monsters. He noticed that despite their advantage, their attacks weren't very effective. He considered helping them fight the Minotaur, but decided it wasn't a good idea to leave Tsukasa's side while his injuries were still being healed. Suddenly, a boy placed his hand on Akira's shoulder and reassured him they would be fine, urging him to go help Commander Missray. He believed Akira was much stronger than any of them. The other heroes also chimed in, saying they had resolved to carry their own weight and that it wasn't right for Tsukasa to bear all the burdens alone. They told Akira they would take care of things and that he should go. So Akira started running towards Missray and told him that he had something to share about Tsukasa, but he'd do it after they dealt with the Minotaur. Missray agreed. Akira then realized that with his dagger broken, the only way to turn the tide was by using his skill. He informed Missray that he was going to use it here no matter what anyone said, and that he was doing it to ensure he could return alive from the dungeon. Missray agreed, adding that their priority should be making sure the other heroes could safely return to the surface. Missray admitted that it would be difficult for him to defeat the Minotaur on his own and asked Akira for help. Akira responded by saying that there were still many things he needed to learn from Missray. Missray smiled and said that he also wanted to know more about smartphones and airplanes. Akira agreed but added that for that to happen, they both needed to survive this battle. Akira began flanking the Minotaur. Missray continued to distract the monster from the front. Zeal noticed their coordinated efforts and suspected that Akira was about to use that skill. He quickly ordered everyone to distance themselves from the Minotaur, knowing that the skill was powerful enough to cause significant destruction in the surrounding area. Missray began using his magic skill, Flash of Lightning, sending powerful lightning bolts at the Minotaur. For the first time, the Minotaur showed signs of taking damage. Seizing the opportunity, Akira activated his skill and cast shadow magic on the Minotaur. The creature was stunned and roared in pain from the attack. Zeal watched in amazement, recognizing the effectiveness of the combination. He remembered how difficult it was to control the skill during training, when it often ran wild. Akira shouted, "Swallow it whole." In an instant, the Minotaur was engulfed by a dark vortex and its head fell to the ground. Everyone was stunned by the display of power. Meanwhile, Akira began to feel dizzy from the intense use of his skills. After returning from the dungeon, Missray informed everyone that they were back safely, but still had to travel through the forest to reach the castle. He instructed everyone to stay alert and not let their guard down. Noticing the uneasy silence around, Missray wondered if everyone was on edge. Suddenly, he checked his stat panel and was shocked to see that his level had increased to 15. Zeal noticed his reaction and asked if he was okay. Missray confirmed that he was fine and decided to keep this information to himself. He was surprised to see that his stats had tripled and his skills had leveled up. He also discovered he had gained 2 new skills, Roar and Intimidation. He knew that sometimes defeating enemies could grant new skills, but he hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. He wondered if Tsukasa had also gained new skills like he had. After a while, they finally returned to the castle. Missray dismissed everyone to rest but asked Akira to stay behind. Akira stood there, wondering what was going on, when Missray approached him with a sword and handed it to him. Akira took the sword and looked at it, puzzled. Missray explained that it was called a katana, a weapon personally made by the first hero. He asked if Akira was familiar with katanas since he and the hero came from the same time period. Akira confirmed that he knew about them and asked why Miss Ray hadn't given the sword to Tsukasa, who was the true hero. Miss Ray replied that there were two reasons. Tsukasa didn't have the skill for a curved blade, and the hero always inherited the holy sword passed down through generations. Akira asked if the king knew about this, and Miss Ray smiled, telling him to keep it a secret because they had secretly taken the sword from the castle treasury. Akira was surprised by this revelation. Miss Ray then mentioned that since Akira's dagger was broken during the fight with the Minotaur, the katana would be perfect for him. Akira unsheathed the sword and admired its craftsmanship. He asked Miss Ray if the sword had a name. Miss Ray said there was an inscription carved into the base of the blade, but they couldn't read the language. Akira examined the inscription on the katana and saw it read Yaro no Kami. Miss Ray asked what it meant, and Akira explained that it had been a month since he last saw kanji characters and guessed it was the name of a god. He then noticed more text and read aloud, "To you, my junior, who will come to this world in the future, may this blade aid you in your most perilous moments." After reading this, Akira smiled and looked up to the sky, wondering about the kind of person the first hero had been. Later, they went to the library where Miss Ray and Akira were writing something. Suddenly, Miss Ray remembered that Akira wanted to talk about Tsukasa. Akira informed him that Tsukasa was cursed, and it was a very strong curse. He mentioned that they had tried using the spell curse several times. Akira asked Miss Ray if he knew anything about it. In the next scene, the princess was in a room, smiling as she practiced some magic. She remarked that her hero should really act, speak, and move like a true hero. Suddenly, Akira appeared at the window and said he now understood how their hero had been cursed. The princess asked who he was and why he had broken into her room so late at night. She was surprised that someone from their group would act so shamelessly. Akira told her he had thought she was just a normal princess who had fallen for their hero. However, he wasn't interested in hearing stories from someone involved in cursing the hero. He picked up a magical object from her table, felt the intense chill coming from it, and asked if it was meant to break the hero's curse. As he turned to leave, he asked why she was following the king's orders. With a serious expression, the princess replied that everything she did was for his sake. Silently, Akira left, thinking about how she must have been raised with a sense of love, considering her father's deep love for her late mother, who had died after giving birth to the princess. Akira jumped out the window and quickly left the area. The princess went to another part of her room and opened the curtains to reveal dozens of similar magical objects. She smirked and prayed for divine punishment for those who obstructed the king's path. When Akira returned to Miss Ray, he found Miss Ray writing something. Miss Ray immediately noticed him and asked how he had found him. Akira was surprised as he had activated stealth. Miss Ray smiled and explained that it was because of the time they had spent together. Miss Ray asked if Akira had found something. Akira confirmed and placed the magical object on the table. Miss Ray was shocked by what he saw and started to say something about someone, but he stopped himself. Akira asked who he was going to talk about, but Miss Ray said that he needed more time to examine the object and would share the results the next day. He told Akira to rest for now. Akira agreed, saying he was exhausted and had reached his limit. He mentioned that it wasn't a good idea to sleep in his room in the castle, so he asked Miss Ray for a hidden place to rest. Miss Ray promised to have a place ready by that night and to continue their discussion the next day. He then wished Akira good night and left. The next day, Akira woke up in the tree, looked up at the sun, and realized he had slept longer than planned. He had intended to wake up before sunrise, but had been more exhausted than he thought. Suddenly, he heard Tsukasa shouting his name. He jumped down from the tree and was surprised to see Tsukasa, wondering where he had come from. Tsukasa looked better and said that the curse was broken and that he was fine. He then told Akira that something was wrong with Commander Miss Ray and led the way. They both ran towards the castle. When they arrived, Akira saw everyone gathered in shock. His eyes widened in horror when he saw the body of Miss Ray lying on the ground with a dagger in his chest. Akira rushed to Miss Ray's body, calling it a lie and struggling to believe his eyes. Tears filled his eyes as he wondered why this had happened. Suddenly, a guard shouted and pointed at Akira, accusing him of being shameless. The guard claimed that the dagger in Miss Ray's chest was Akira's and called him a murderer. The other students started pointing at Akira and demanded he explain himself. Tsukasa also asked if Akira had really killed Miss Ray. Akira was frustrated, knowing that his dagger had been broken during the fight with the Minotaur. But when he looked at everyone's faces, he noticed something was off. He saw the princess smiling behind the king and realized he had been trapped. They were all under a curse, and it would be difficult for him alone to clear up this misunderstanding. Defeated, Akira sat down and sadly removed the dagger from Miss Ray's chest. Tsukasa was confused. but Akira turned to the king and asked if he was in the way, should he just leave? The king replied that he couldn't let a murderer roam free, and the princess approached him, saying he knew too much just like Miss Ray. She demanded he accept his punishment as the murderer of the last line of defense. Soldiers surrounded Akira as the king ordered them to capture him. Tsukasa tried to defend him, but Zeal stopped him. Akira warned the king that no matter how many soldiers he gathered, they were still insignificant. He then activated his stealth and disappeared, leaving the guards in shock. The king shouted for them to search for Akira, believing he must still be nearby. Meanwhile, Zeal used his powers to communicate with Akira, informing him that the king was targeting him. Zeal also told Akira that Commander Miss Ray had left something for him and a letter in his room. He advised Akira to leave the castle immediately before the king found him. Akira thanked Zeal for the warning and promised to take care. In Miss Ray's room, Akira found the letter and the supplies Miss Ray had prepared for him. He realized that Miss Ray had planned to help him leave the castle in a few days. Tears filled Akira's eyes as he thought of Miss Ray. Determined to avenge him, Akira started running. He knew he didn't have enough power yet, but he promised himself that he would survive and make things right. After that, Akira entered the dungeon, moving quietly and killing monsters one by one. He took a deep breath, realizing he had reached the 5th floor. Last time he was here, they had easily gone down to the 30th floor, but now he was alone and had to rely on his skills. Looking at the dead goblin in front of him, Akira thought that even low-level monsters like these could overwhelm him if they attacked together. He remembered Miss Ray's advice. If the king targeted him and he had to run, the dungeon would be his best hiding place. Miss Ray had suggested he go to the Cantidon dungeon and aim for the 100th floor. Akira was piercing through a goblin with his dagger when he discovered a rare material containing mana. He knew it was valuable for suppressing his own mana, so he wanted to collect as many as he could. With only 30 days of supplies for Miss Ray, he aimed to reach the 30th floor quickly to avoid running into adventurers exploring the dungeon. Suddenly, Akira felt something strange as his threat detection skill reacted strongly. He looked around, puzzled, wondering if a strong monster was nearby. His perception skills should have detected anyone close, but he considered the possibility that someone might bypass it. He doubted anyone that strong would be in such a low-level dungeon. Then he wondered if it was a trap. To test, he threw the mana-containing material, and arrows shot out from the trap. Realizing that it was a mana-reactive trap, he understood he must remain cautious. Even though he had walked this path before, he knew he could only rely on himself, his body, and his techniques. On the other hand, Tsukasa approached Commander Miss Ray's grave, knelt beside it, and spoke. He told the commander that he had learned from Vice Commander Zeal about the curse and how he and Akira tried to lift it. He mentioned that things had become tense among the classmates since Miss Ray's passing, with frequent fights and people sticking only to their close friends. He was worried about Akira, who had been gone for 10 days, and felt lost and out of place in this situation. Suddenly, Tsukasa sensed someone behind him and quickly drew his sword. It was Ueno, who looked sad. She said she hadn't meant to intrude and apologized for startling him. Tsukasa explained that he had heard she was involved in lifting the curse and thanked her, also apologizing for pointing his sword at her. She reassured him, saying it was normal to be on guard. When he asked if she had been cursed, she winked and told him that she was an exorcist, so her curse resistance was higher than anyone in their class. He was taken aback by this. She understood if he had trouble trusting her, as the curse was indeed very powerful. She admitted that she wasn't entirely sure if she had lifted the curse completely and asked if he could come back to the same place tomorrow. She promised to prove that the curse had no effect on her so he could trust her. She also mentioned that having someone to work with was better than being alone, and that it was difficult to doubt everyone when she was on her own. Hearing this, Tsukasa felt sad, realizing how hard it must be to be isolated after always being in the spotlight. He agreed to come back the next day, but said he couldn't trust her easily, so he would bring his sword and keep a fair distance from her. She smiled and said that was reasonable, and that she wasn't foolish enough to approach an armed man carelessly. Tsukasa smiled back, feeling it had been a while since he laughed with others like that. He then placed a flower in Miss Ray's grave, declaring he would definitely change the world as its hero. The flower was a hollyhock, which in the language of flowers meant hard to believe. She commented that it was a fitting choice. Tsukasa said he would remember that, looked at the sky and promised Akira that he would come to wherever he was. That night, the king spoke with the princess, expressing relief that they'd finally gotten rid of Akira, though he never expected Miss Ray to fall so easily. The princess agreed and suggested they should reward the Night Crows for their excellent work. She then informed the king that the curse on everyone, including the hero, was complete. Now the only thing left was to create a reason to go to war against the Eastern Kingdom. The king speculated that Akira might die a miserable death somewhere, but he still ordered the princess to have the Night Crows track him just to be safe. Inside the dungeon, Akira was cooking his meal over a fire, realizing that it was his 30th meal and that 10 days had passed since he entered. To conserve his rations, he had begun roasting monsters, making sure to avoid eating any humanoid ones. As he ate, he thought about how once his rations were gone, he wouldn't have the luxury of being picky anymore. Although he was relaxed while eating, he'd always kept his stealth and threat detection skills active for safety. Over time, these skills had improved as he fought against the dungeon's monsters. Gazing at the large door ahead, Akira knew he needed to finish his meal and prepare himself because the next room would be the boss's chamber. In the dungeon, giant doors appeared every 10 floors, marking the entrance to a boss room. The door in front of Akira had led to the 60th floor. So far, he had faced many boss battles alone, even though he knew he was at a big disadvantage. The fight against the 50th floor boss, Fenrir, had been especially brutal because he had to face not only Fenrir, but also 4 red wolves from the 30th floor. His stealth attacks had been crucial in that battle, but Akira realized he needed to learn how to fight without relying on his skills and instead focus on defeating his opponents with a sword technique. To improve, he chose not to use his stealth or threat detection from the 51st to the 59th floors, concentrating on his curved blade skill and getting more comfortable with it. However, he wondered if he could keep this up. After packing his things, he stood up, looked up at the door, and started walking towards it. Akira opened the door and stepped inside. At first, there were no lights, but as soon as he fully entered, the door closed behind him and the lights turned on. The door wouldn't open again until he defeated the boss. This was a do-or-die situation. A large monster appeared before him, with the upper body of a lion, the lower body of a goat, and a venomous snake as its tail. It reminded Akira of the chimera from Greek mythology. He thought this might be a one-on-one battle. The monster roared loudly and charged at him. Akira quickly dodged, drew his katana and attacked. However, the monster's body was incredibly tough. The snake tail then launched a poison attack at Akira, but he jumped out of the way just in time. The poison was so strong that it melted the floor like acid. Akira realized this wasn't just a one-on-one fight. It was more like 2-on-1, since the snake could attack from a distance while the lion could strike up close. He noticed there were no blind spots, making this an extremely difficult fight. The lion jumped to attack him, but Akira dodged it aside. However, the lion was ready with its other leg and caught him off guard, landing a powerful kick. With that kick, Akira was severely injured, lying helplessly on the floor. He felt like his ribs were broken. The lion slowly approached him, giving him an intimidating look. Akira knew he had to fight with everything he had left. Just as the monster was about to attack again, Akira used his shadow magic, which stopped the monster in its tracks and began to tear it apart from within. However, using shadow magic took a heavy toll on Akira. He started to lose consciousness, remembering how Miss Ray had warned him that shadow magic had a mind of its own. It was incredibly powerful, but consumed a vast amount of mana and had many flaws. Miss Ray had cautioned him to never let his guard down while using it. Despite this, Akira continued to use the skill until the monster was completely destroyed, leaving the room soaked in its blood. His vision blurred and he felt his consciousness slipping away. Akira realized how difficult it was to fight a boss without relying on his skills. He tried to use a recovery skill, but his mana was too low for full restoration. In the beginning, God created the sky, then the land for people to live on. Using his own form as a model, he created humans. This means that all 4 different nations were God's creations. To help them protect themselves, God granted each nation different abilities, hoping that by nurturing people, it would soothe his heart, which had become hardened by conflicts among the gods. However, it turned out that humans were not much different from the gods. They desired more land, wealth, and partners, leading them to wage wars across the land. Aether, angered by their behavior, created monsters and divided the land into 4 parts. The demons who could control these monsters were hated by the other 3 races and were driven to the volcano continent. The elves chose to live on the continent where the sacred tree towered into the sky, known as the forest. The remaining 2 races, humans and beastmen, continued fighting until the bitter end. The humans eventually won and claimed the largest and richest continent, Cantonin, while the beastmen took the brute continent. This is how the races came to live on their own continents. However, even after the war ended, the demons did not stop their attacks on the other 3 races. At that time, the demons were still considered the common enemy of all three races. Suddenly, Akira opened his eyes, realizing it was all a dream, a memory of the day he first met Commander Misray. He sat up and noticed that all his wounds were gone. Feeling hungry, he decided to find something to eat. He glanced at the chimera's dead body and thought that the meat didn't seem rotten. There were no bugs or maggots, so it should be safe to eat. He began scorching the meat using magic stone. In Morrigan, even people without magic skills could perform simple spells like lighting a small fire or creating water. This was known as magic lifestyle. When he took the first bite, he was surprised by how delicious it was. As he ate, Akira wondered how his injuries had healed, considering how close he had been to death. He speculated that he might have gained a revival skill and checked his stats. That's when he noticed a new skill, good luck. Lighting a torch, he started walking, thinking if he had gained the skill earlier, he might have been able to prevent the assassination of Commander Misray. Suddenly, Akira sensed something above him. A monster was coming straight at him. He quickly jumped aside to avoid it. He realized that not only was his threat detection skill going off, but his perception skill was also alerting him like crazy. He was sure there was another person nearby, but he couldn't figure out where. A slime appeared in front of him, ready to attack. As it opened its large mouth to swallow him, Akira swiftly sliced it apart with his sharp sword, thinking it was just a weak opponent. But then, to his surprise, a girl fell unconscious from the slime's stomach. Akira stared at her, realizing that he had a new problem on his hands. He couldn't just leave her there. As he looked at her pointy ears and beautiful face, he guessed she might be one of the elves Commander Misray told him about. He remembered that elves deeply loved nature and sacred trees, while humans who often cut down trees were their opposites. But he also knew that elves rarely left their continent, so he wondered what she was doing here. He lit a fire and sat down, deciding to wait until the girl regained consciousness. As he sat there, his thoughts drifted back to when he first arrived in this world. His days had been filled with intense training, learning, and non-stop incidents. It had been a long time since he had simply waited and done nothing, making it difficult for him to be patient. To pass the time, he opened his stats panel, recalling that there was a skill he wanted to try but didn't know how to use. Suddenly, he noticed a new skill called Eye of the World and decided to give it a shot. When he activated the skill, a flood of pop-ups appeared before his eyes, displaying the level information of everything around him. The sudden influx of data made him dizzy, so he quickly cancelled the skill. He realized that Eye of the World was similar to shadow magic, which he had struggled to use. He read the description and saw he could adjust the sight area, so he hoped it might work better if he could make adjustments. While he was experimenting with the skill, he noticed the girl starting to move and regain consciousness. She sat up and looked around, confused about her surroundings. Meanwhile, a samurai named Asahina Kyosuke was inside the princess' room, cutting off all the magic items through which she had cursed the students. He was also wondering where he actually was. Akira looked at her and asked if she was hurt anywhere. She seemed confused by his presence but answered that she was fine. Suddenly, she started to mumble. He offered her some food and she took it and quickly ran to hide behind a pole. As she ate there, he thought she resembled an abandoned cat. While eating, she kept glancing at him. Akira showed her another meal and asked if she wanted it. She came over and thanked him. He then asked her why she was inside the slime and what had happened to her. She said she didn't know and didn't want to talk about it even if she did. Akira agreed and fell silent, watching her eat. He wondered if her unusual behavior was because he had activated Eye of the World when she woke up. As he examined her, he noticed he could see her status panel. She wasn't just any elf. She was a high elf. He wondered if she might be of elven royalty. To his surprise, she also had the Eye of the World skill just like him. He thought it was unusual for extra skills to be so common and wondered if she could see his status panel as well. She came over to him and asked why he was in this place, calling him by his name. Akira felt a bit awkward, thinking she should have been more polite and asked for his name first. He explained that he was there to increase his level. He noticed her white hair and red eyes, which were unusual for elves, who typically had blonde hair and blue eyes. He greeted her by her name, Amelia, and asked if she was planning to return to the Elven continent. She said she wasn't going back and was considering staying with him. He mentioned that he planned to return once he finished the dungeon. Amelia then asked if he didn't have a place in the human castle. When Akira asked how she knew that, she explained that it was because he had the same eyes as her. He wondered if she meant Eye of the World skill, but said his skill level was too low to understand what it meant. She clarified that it wasn't about the skill, but rather because he had rejected it. Akira fell silent for a moment and then suggested they call it a day. Amelia said she was going to sleep and lay down on the floor. Akira looked at her, threw a sheet over her, and lit a fire. He decided to widen the radius of his threat detection skill to ensure her safety as well. As she lay on the cold floor, Amelia reflected on her words and realized she, like Akira, had no place to return. Suddenly, she felt a warm breeze and wondered if it was part of Akira's lifestyle magic. She thought it was considerate of him to use his magic to make her comfortable. Although his way of speaking was a bit rough, she noticed that his eyes, though intense, hinted at a kind nature. As she looked at his face with his eyes closed, she began to think that he might actually be a very kind person. She remembered her time in the elven village where no one cared for her and even her own siblings had rejected her. In contrast, Akira, who was clearly not from her world, seemed to care about her. She wondered where he had come from. In the castle, the students gathered around Tsukasa, wondering why they had been called. One student smirked and jokingly asked if Tsukasa was going to say that they were going to defeat the Demon Lord. Tsukasa confirmed that was exactly what he had in mind and suggested they should go immediately. The others started whispering, unsure if he was serious or just joking, and called him an idiot. Tsukasa ignored them, thinking that their reaction might be a result of the curse meant to disrupt their teamwork. One student asked if Tsukasa planned to run from the situation and earn the title of Weep. Tsukasa found this annoying and told him that if anyone didn't want to come, they didn't have to join him. He thought the king and the princess were trying to force him into submission, so he decided to leave the castle on his own. Just then, a samurai stepped forward and said he would go with Tsukasa. This surprised him, but then the exorcist and healer also volunteered to join. Seeing this, the tamer, knight, and wind mage also agreed to come along. Tsukasa felt relieved and told them that they would leave as soon as they were ready. One of the girls asked if the king would object to their departure. Tsukasa explained that he was the one who had ordered them to defeat the Demon Lord in the first place, so even if the king objected, they would still go. They quickly split up to pack their belongings, and Tsukasa told them that they needed to leave the castle before the king could interfere. They managed to get away from the castle without any trouble and gathered outside. Tsukasa then asked why they'd all chosen to come with him. He apologized if it seemed like he was doubting them. He just wanted to understand their reasons. Ueno stepped forward and explained that the people who had joined him were not affected by the curse. She noted that their behavior had changed since the previous day. Asahina said he couldn't be sure, but it was likely related to what had happened with them. Tsukasa was curious and asked what he meant. Asahina told them that when he woke up, he wasn't in his own room, but in a room he had never seen before. There were many crystals in the room and he accidentally broke 6 of them. After that, he found himself with a katana in his hand. He thought it would be suspicious if someone saw him, so he returned to his room right away. They asked if his body moved on its own and wondered if the katana might be cursed. Ueno took a look at the katana, held it, and said it wasn't cursed. She had never seen such a pure white katana before and noted that it was a very good weapon. Asahina mentioned that he had tried to analyze it himself and found out that its name was Hakuryu. Tsukasa wondered why only 6 of them had their curses lifted and felt there was still a lot that they didn't understand about it. But he decided it wasn't the time to dwell on it. He said they should move on. As they were about to leave, a guard approached and informed them that Vice Commander Zeal was observing the guard's movements. It seemed the king still hadn't realized that Tsukasa and his friends had left the castle. Standing at the top of the castle, Zeal looked at them and thought that this was the best he could do for Tsukasa and his group. He also felt that his mission from Commander Misray was now complete. Asahina asked Tsukasa where he planned to go now, since he had said that they were going to defeat the Demon Lord. Tsukasa replied that he was thinking that they should leave the forest for now and get out of the Redis Kingdom's territory as soon as possible. Asahina's instinct skill was telling him that if he stayed with Tsukasa, he would be reunited with Akira again. Tsukasa, Akira, and Asahina had been in the same class since kindergarten, but Tsukasa had always been a bit hostile towards Akira. Meanwhile, Akira was mostly indifferent to his surroundings. Because of this, Asahina never really got a chance to hang out with them. One day, Asahina saw Akira working at a construction site. Akira noticed him as well, sweat dripping from his forehead. Surprised, Asahina asked if it really was Akira. When Akira tried to remember Asahina's name but couldn't, Asahina thought it was just like him to forget. Asahina introduced himself, noticing Akira's hesitation, and realized that Akira didn't want him to tell anyone about it. Asahina assured him that he wouldn't say a word. Akira showed his gratitude, but Asahina mentioned that their school didn't prohibit part-time jobs, so he wouldn't get him in trouble. Akira explained that he didn't want others, especially his sister, to see him struggling. Asahina shared that he also had a little sister, and showed Akira a picture of her with another girl. Akira recognized the other girl as his own sister. They both looked at each other in shock, realizing that it was an amazing coincidence. They both smiled at each other, and from that day on, Asahina grew closer to Akira even at school. That's why the memory of not being able to help Akira that day weighed so heavily on his heart. Since they arrived in this new world, Asahina hadn't spoken to Akira at all because Akira always tried to stay under the radar, and Asahina respected that choice. But now that they were separated, Asahina regretted not talking to him sooner or more often. He doubted he could have spoken to Akira before the curse was broken and wondered what impression he must have left on Akira when he was under the curse, especially when he believed that Akira was the one who killed Commander Missray. Tsukasa questioned Asahina about why he was coming along, pointing out that they hadn't really spoken to each other before and that he had even asked him the same thing when they were leaving the castle. Asahina admitted that Tsukasa might get angry, but he confessed that he wanted to find Akira and felt that by sticking with Tsukasa, he might meet Akira because he believed the two were alike. This irritated Tsukasa, who quickly retorted that they were nothing alike. Asahina then asked if Tsukasa's dislike for Akira stemmed from their similarities. Tsukasa turned away, insisting that he wasn't the type of person who would hate someone just because they were similar to him. Asahina, however, thought that Akira was the kind of person who carried all his burdens alone, while Tsukasa tried to protect his classmates by taking on challenges and always pushing forward. He pointed out that they were indeed very similar, which annoyed Tsukasa even more, who snapped at Asahina to stop repeating it. Akira and Amelia were fighting together in the dungeon, both using their abilities to clear the monsters on their sides. Akira had initially thought that when Amelia said she wanted to stay with him, she would be a burden, but he realized he was wrong. After the battle, he suggested they find a place to eat. They sat down and Akira started grilling some food. As he began eating, he put his hands together and said "Itadakimasu." Amelia copied him, curious about what he was doing. He explained that it was a custom from his country, a way to show gratitude for the meal before eating. Amelia then asked him to tell her more about himself. Akira, a bit surprised, asked what she wanted to know. She said she was interested in hearing about his family or friends. Akira told her that he only had his mom and little sister in his family. When she asked about his father, he explained that his father left when he was 10 years old because he didn't want to take responsibility for their sickly mother and the two of them. Since then, they had managed to live somewhat normally, with Akira working part-time jobs. This year, his little sister even wanted to start working part-time, likely because she was worried, as Akira was rarely home due to his jobs. She listened to Akira and said it must have been hard for him. She then revealed that she also had a little sister, but unlike her sister was much better at everything, prettier, stronger, and almost perfect in every way. She felt like she was good at nothing in comparison. Akira responded by saying that if her sister was perfect, there was no way to improve on that, but he personally found people with weaknesses more interesting. He added that if her sister was as perfect as she described, he probably wouldn't get along with her very well. This made him think of Tsukasa, who he felt hid behind a perfect charade, something he didn't like about him. Akira mentioned that this conversation reminded him of many things, and it made him crave rice. Amelia then told him that there was a country where he could eat rice, which surprised him. She explained that they could visit a country called Yamato, which was built by a hero who came before him. He also mentioned that Yamato had a popular spot called the Hot Spring. Akira said he hoped to see it someday, but for now, he wanted to focus on leveling up. Amelia pointed out that he was already strong enough and probably stronger than most people, but Akira, even without using his Eye of the World skill, knew he was different, as his stats were clearly higher than those of the hero who was summoned with him. When Amelia asked if he still wanted to keep leveling up, Akira said he was aiming for level 100 because it was the one and only goal that Commander Missray had left for him. Amelia warned Akira that if he tried to raise his level too quickly without honing his skills, his body wouldn't be able to keep up with it. He agreed, explaining that this was why he had been trying to clear entire floors using only his swordsmanship without relying on his other skills, but admitted it was incredibly difficult. He even thought to himself that without his skills he would surely die. She then offered to help him and suddenly used her magic, skill ceiling, on him. Akira was shocked, wondering what kind of magic that was and if that was what she meant by helping. Just then, she noticed a monster approaching behind them and shouted to warn him, thinking the timing was perfect. Akira, now unable to use his threat detection, perception, or even his stealth, asked her if she was serious. She calmly explained that since he wanted to fight without his skills, she sealed them for him. However, she reassured him that she would support him if he found himself in danger. Akira said he was fine and charged at the bat with a sword, but he struggled to keep up with its quick movements. The bat was white with a special trait that allowed it to confuse its opponent's 5 senses, making it difficult to pinpoint its exact location. This wasn't a problem when Akira had his perception and stealth skills, but without them, he found it very challenging. Amelia told him that he was relying too much on his 5 senses and advised him to focus on sensing the mana flowing inside his body. She explained that if he could use his sense to control his mana, he would be able to enhance his physical abilities as well. Following her instructions, Akira tried to control his mana, gripping his katana tighter. He felt a familiar sensation, similar to what he used to feel unconsciously when using his stealth skill. As the bat flew towards him, he dodged its attack, confusing the creature. Seizing the moment, Akira jumped back and quickly counterattacked, slicing the bat in 2 pieces. Seeing this, she was shocked and asked him how exactly he managed to do that. Akira replied he just did what she told him to do. She was amazed and pointed out that the clump of mana had become completely independent from his body, something that was impossible for any normal human to replicate. She added that the only person who could do the exact same thing before was the first hero. Hearing this, Akira's eyes widened in shock. After that, they finally reached the boss gate for this floor. When they entered the room, they noticed it was much larger than the previous ones. It was the boss room of the 80th floor, but Akira wondered where the boss was. Suddenly, he shouted Amelia's name and pointed above them. A huge dragon was soaring overhead. He grabbed her and jumped to safety. Once they were on the ground, he asked if she was alright, and she confirmed that she was. Akira remarked that they couldn't do anything as long as the dragon was flying. He asked if she could use her gravity magic to drag it to the ground, and Amelia said she would try and told him to be careful when the dragon fell. She began casting her spell and then attacked the dragon with it. The dragon roared loudly as it descended closer to the ground. Seizing the opportunity, Akira jumped and attacked with his katana, managing to pierce through the dragon's throat. As he attacked, Amelia shouted for him to get away. Akira tried to jump back immediately, but the dragon managed to kick him, sending him crashing to the ground. Amelia saw him fall and rushed over, but he assured her that he was fine. He mentioned that he didn't expect the dragon to still be alive after being stabbed in the throat, as he had put everything into his attack. However, it seemed like he had inflicted significant damage. Amelia said the dragon felt unusual. When Akira asked what she meant, she explained that while his attack was powerful and his blade was extremely sharp, the dragon seemed weaker than expected. She compared it to the chimera she had faced in the previous boss room and noted that something felt off with this dragon. Akira used his Eye of the World to check on the dragon's stats and was surprised to find them lower than he expected. Just then, Amelia warned him that the dragon was coming again. He told Amelia to stand back to avoid being attacked and charged at the dragon. As the dragon breathed fire at him, he dodged and closed the distance. Akira agreed with Amelia that something was definitely wrong. If the katana was effective, he decided not to hesitate. He jumped into the air, drove his katana through the dragon, and activated shadow magic. The room was soon covered in dragon's blood as the beast collapsed. When he stood near Amelia, she asked him to look. To his astonishment, the dragon began to transform into a black cat. He checked her stats, which also showed black cat. Suddenly, the cat spoke, expressing surprise that a human with such a stupid face had defeated her. She mentioned it was the first time that a human had reached this floor, so she might have let her guard down. Akira, shocked that the cat could talk and irritated by the insult, called it a stupid and noisy cat. The cat revealed she had a message for him from the Demon Lord, which shocked both Akira and Amelia. The cat said that in the continent of Volcano, she would be waiting for them in the innermost part of the demon castle. Meanwhile, Tsukasa and his crew finally reached their destination, the country named Yamato. Akira asked why the Demon Lord was waiting for him and what the reason was. The cat said she didn't know what the Demon Lord was thinking, but she only knew that he had entrusted her with this message. She explained that they were magical beings created by the Demon Lord, serving as his eyes, ears, and limbs. Everything they saw and heard was reported back to him. Akira was shocked and confirmed if the Demon Lord was the one who created the monsters, since he had thought it was God who did. The cat told him not to believe that nonsense and recalled vividly how the Demon Lord had created her with his own hands. Akira wondered if the information and legends passed down among humanity were false, questioning whether Commander Miss Ray had lied to him. The cat then asked Akira to end her life. Shocked, he asked why. She explained that since she had completed her duty and the transformation spell was lifted, she believed there was no value in keeping her alive. As Akira moved closer and began feeling her fluffiness, Amelia joined in and asked to pet her too. The cat grew angrier, demanding they stay away. Amelia wondered why she didn't just run if she didn't like it. The cat replied that she couldn't run because Amelia's gravity magic had pinned her to the ground and she was too injured from having her bones broken. The cat said she had already accepted her fate but still asked Akira to kill her. Despite her pleas, Akira refused to do so. The cat worried that she would become a laughingstock when she returned, but Akira offered her a chance to come with them instead. The The cat questioned if he understood what that meant, as being with him would mean all his actions and words would be reported back to the Demon Lord. Akira smiled and told the cat that she would find a place where she belonged. The Demon Lord would get some intel, and he would learn more about the truth of their world. Plus, he could fluff her every day. The cat was speechless, saying she couldn't understand how his mind worked. Amelia added that since they won the fight, they had the right to decide her fate. The cat agreed to go with them but warned them not to regret it later. Akira chuckled, remarking that she talked big for someone who couldn't even move. He then wondered why they couldn't find any exits. They had checked every corner of the room, but no door or stairway to the next floor had appeared, unlike before when such exits always showed up after defeating the boss monster. The cat said it might be her fault that they couldn't find an exit. She explained that the dungeon created by the Demon Lord had its own will and wouldn't let any monsters escape. This made Akira wonder if the dungeon had its own consciousness. The cat then asked if he was going to change his mind and kill her. She suggested that if they didn't, the entrance and exit would remain the same, and they would eventually starve. Akira said that even if he had known this from the start, he wouldn't have killed her. He chose to keep her with him instead. Amelia agreed and said it was too soon to give up. Akira asked if the cat knew how they could get out of there. She said they needed to give her a name first. The cat then asked if she was suggesting a master and servant pact. Akira was confused, so the cat explained that it was a way of binding the souls of a human and a monster. The cat explained that originally, demon folk could control monsters, but there were rare humans born with a strong connection to them. The first hero created a ritual called a pact to formalize this connection. She thought that Akira, who could control his mana like the first hero, might also be able to form such a pact. She asked if Akira was going to become her master and relieve her of her duty as the floor's monster. The idea surprised her, but she explained that the pact would only work if both parties consented. Once established, the pact would last until one of them died. They would be able to know each other's positions and communicate telepathically. However, if one died, the other would soon follow, which was usually too much for normal humans to handle. She wondered if Akira was even human, and he joked that perhaps he had already entered the monster's domain. She looked at him doubtfully, thinking that a normal human wouldn't say that. Still, it was convenient for her because she couldn't face the Demon Lord again after losing to a human. Akira removed his gloves and they shook hands. He introduced himself as Oda Akira, her master, and said he would give her a name. She smiled and accepted him as her master, pledging to stay by his side no matter what. He named her Yoru, explaining that it was because her fur reminded him of the beautiful night sky. Yoru liked the name and accepted it, swearing to serve him for the rest of her life. She said she was happy to join them. Amelia noticed a mark on Akira's hand and pointed out that it matched the mark on Yoru's forehead. Using telepathy, Yoru explained that the mark was proof of their connection. Akira then asked if Yoru was still connected to the Demon Lord. She confirmed this and said it might be too late to ask. But Akira wondered if the Demon Lord would be angry about the pact. Yoru said that the Demon Lord would not mind and suggested Akira think of himself as a second master. Akira was unsure if it was really okay, but Yoru told him not to worry about such small details. Amelia looked on, confused by their telepathic conversation. Suddenly, Yoru told Akira to look as a magic circle began to appear in the center of the room. She informed him that the path to the next floor had finally opened. Akira looked at the magic circle and noticed it was different from before. Amelia explained that it was a ring magic circle, and whoever entered it could go to their desired location. Hearing this, he asked what would happen if more than one person entered at the same time. She told him that in this case, the circle would choose the will of only one person, and the others would also be transferred to that chosen destination. He realized it was similar to the one that appeared in their classroom, thinking that maybe someone wanted to escape the daily routine and go to another world. While he was lost in thought, she suddenly mentioned that she was hungry. While Tsukasa and his crew enjoyed the familiar taste of rice and wasabi, surrounded by a variety of delicious dishes, the atmosphere felt almost like home, reminiscent of Japan. Tsukasa and Asahina sat together, with Tsukasa mentioning that he wanted to meet up after their meal. He explained that there was a particular book he wanted to find, emphasizing how little they knew about this world. Tsukasa reflected on how they wouldn't have discovered this place if not for the kind merchant they encountered in the forest. Asahina agreed, admitting they were reckless for entering the castle library despite being forbidden, and how he never suspected anything at the time. Tsukasa mentioned that they didn't have much money left for traveling and they needed to gain more knowledge about this world. Asahina suggested that if Tsukasa planned to leave the city to search for the book, he would join them, noting that it seemed easier to join forces in this country. The similarities to Japan made the place appealing to them, and the more they learned about it, the more they loved it. Tsukasa, however, was reluctant to join forces with Akira, feeling that their paths were different. He decided that once they were prepared, he would set his sights on the Demon Lord's continent. In his mind, he was the true hero, not Akira. Tsukasa was determined not to wait for Akira or chase after him. His goal was to defeat the Demon Lord quickly and return to their original world with everyone else. The exorcist, healer, and mage mentioned that they would leave the city and return to Hatagoya first, as the clothes they washed would be dry and they could also visit the harbor. Tsukasa smiled and said that was fine. They would form their respective groups after finishing their meal. As he enjoyed the delicious food, he wondered if Akira was eating properly. Meanwhile, Akira was cooking a meal inside the dungeon, with Yoru and Amelia sitting beside him. He wondered aloud if this was the final floor of the labyrinth. Yoru also speculated that it might be, noting that it was said that those who passed through it would reach their desired place. Holding a bowl of soup, Akira mentioned that he had a strange feeling about this floor, and since they hadn't reached the 100th area yet, he decided to keep on going until they found it. Amelia asked if he was aiming for level 100 in this dungeon, and he confirmed that it was on Commander Mizrae's advice. Upon hearing Mizrae's name, Yoru was shocked. Akira noticed her reaction and asked if she knew him. Yoru hesitated, mentioning it was a long time ago, and asked if someone named Mizrae had come from the main temple. Akira confirmed this, explaining that Mizrae had been killed and he wanted to avenge him. Amelia, with tears in her eyes, told Akira that it must be really painful for him and expressed her sorrow for his loss. Yoru, observing the intensity of his bloodlust, remarked that Akira had already surpassed the realm of humans. She thought the main castle was already strong, but Akira mentioned that there had been many struggles in the dungeon. He noted that instead of their blades being unbreakable, they often ended up broken. Yoru then explained that if they fought using only sword techniques, they would be in an even worse situation because the dungeon was filled with monsters with strong physical attacks. Akira was surprised to hear this, wondering why he hadn't realized it before. Yoru explained that if a blade didn't work, they could easily defeat the monsters using magic. Akira then understood that this was what had happened with the chimera. Yoru further elaborated that if someone entered the dungeon with just a sword and chose not to use magic or other powers, the chances of winning were almost impossible. Akira finally grasped that by relying solely on their swords throughout the entire dungeon, they had effectively been playing on hard mode. Akira asked if there were other labyrinths like this one. Yoru explained that each labyrinth had its own unique characteristics, and some would be the complete opposite. She guessed that there might be one like that in the Elf Forest territory. Akira realized that there were dungeons on other continents as well, so if he aimed to reach level 100, they should deal with dungeons on other continents. Yoru then suggested they start moving since she had finished her meal. Akira agreed, noting that they were done eating as well. Yoru shrank down to a smaller size and jumped into Akira's shoulders. As they walked towards the magic circle, Akira thought about where he should go next. He remembered his mother and little sister waiting for him in the original world and knew he should hurry back. However, he also understood that there were still things he needed to do in this world. He glanced at Amelia and realized he couldn't go back now, nor could he back down. Sensing his thoughts, Amelia reassured him that it was all right. Together, they stepped onto the magic circle. After successfully conquering the canton and dungeon, Akira began his journey to the next stage, accompanied by his new friends. When Amelia was a child, she and her younger sister, Kirika, were in a room where they noticed a poster. Marika pointed it out and asked Amelia to take a look. The poster showed two twin girls with different hair colors staring at each other. After looking at the picture for a while, Amelia said, "They're twins just like us," and wondered what was written beneath their picture. Suddenly, a man wearing a cloak appeared behind them. He asked if they wanted to know what it said. Amelia was confused, but Marika eagerly asked him to tell them. He replied, "It says compensation." Meanwhile, in the present time, Akira and Amelia teleported to the forest using the magic circle. As Amelia looked around, she only had one question: why here? Yoru glanced at the sacred tree and informed them that they were in elf territory. Amelia, unsettled, said she wanted to go somewhere else. Akira asked if she meant that they had returned to their homeland. She said it was a bad situation because she wasn't supposed to be there. Suddenly, Akira grabbed her and leaped away, dodging an arrow. She was shocked when she recognized the arrow. An elf appeared on top of a tree, aiming at Akira again, but Akira had already sensed it. He quickly moved towards the elf, caught him, and held a knife to his throat, warning him not to move. Amelia recognized the elf and asked if he was Liam Gladiolus. He smiled and confirmed it, saying she had surprised him. During his exploration, the last thing he expected to see was a shameless princess who abandoned her country. Amelia said she didn't abandon her country, but Liam reminded her that she ran away. This made her upset. He then asked if she thought disappearing was the best choice, adding that it didn't matter anymore. He told her that there was no place for her in the kingdom now because they had Kirika. Smirking, he mentioned that Kirika would be arriving soon, and they wouldn't be able to escape. Akira, irritated by Liam's taunting, shook him and said his rambling was getting annoying. He called Yoru, ordering her to grow to full size so they could hop on. Akira added that they would take Liam as their hostage. Hearing that, Yoru grew to her full size. Amelia, confused, asked what Akira was doing and urged him to escape, but he insisted she get on. Once they were mounted, Yoru began running. Amelia, still anxious, warned him that there were 11 elves in the forest, and if they started chasing, escaping would be impossible. Akira told her to lead them into an open area, explaining that it was hard to fight with his katana in the dense forest. If they could reach a wide space, he believed he could handle it. Amelia quickly gave directions, and soon they arrived at a large clearing. Akira surveyed the area, thinking that they might have a chance to escape, but just as he began to feel hopeful, Amelia, looking around nervously, informed him that they were already surrounded. Surrounded by enemies, Akira told Amelia to stay on Yoru and pulled Liam off of her. The elves demanded that they release Liam if they valued their lives. Akira countered by saying they should let them go in exchange for Liam, but Kirika appeared and said that wouldn't happen. Angrily, she mentioned that although they've been running and hiding, they were now found, and it would be too dangerous to let them go. Akira looked at Kirika, realizing she was Amelia's younger sister. He asked what she meant and if Amelia wasn't the princess of their country. Kirika, showing a scar on her arm, said, "You really don't know anything, do you? This scar is from when Amelia poisoned me." She explained that harming royalty, even as a little sister, was a serious crime, which is why Amelia was branded as a criminal. Amelia, shocked, shouted that Kiriko's wrong. She explained that she gave her a healing potion, but it was replaced with poison. Kirika smirked, mocking Amelia, asking if she was suggesting she poisoned herself and demanded proof. She coldly told Amelia that her very existence brought disaster to their country, calling her the unwanted child. Akira stood still, carefully observing Kirika's behavior as she walked closer to him. She thanked him for delivering the criminal and locked eyes with him. Suddenly, Akira shouted not to look into her eyes, but it was too late. Kirika had already used her ability, mesmerization. She claimed that his heart now belonged to her. Amelia shouted, quickly countering, yelling that it wasn't true. She insisted that Akira's heart was his own property and told Kirika not to selfishly claim it. Kirika was surprised by Amelia's sudden confidence, as she had been trembling until then. Kirika smirked and asked why Amelia was upset about her using her skills. She boasted that when she used mesmerization, no one could resist, declaring Akira was hers now. But then Akira's voice came from behind, calmly asking, "Since when did I become someone else's possession?" Amelia smiled at this while Kirika was left shocked, wondering why her ability hadn't worked. She couldn't believe it and started questioning whether Akira was stronger than her. Thinking it over, she dismissed the idea, convinced that as a gold rank adventurer, she had to be stronger. Akira was stunned when he heard Kirika mention her rank. He remembered reading about gold rank in a book from the castle's library. It was the highest rank for adventurers, and only 4 existed in the entire world. He wondered if she truly was one of them. Angrily, Kirika scolded them for not knowing their place. She revealed her sword with a smirk, challenged Akira to a fight. She told him that if he lost, he'd have to hand over Amelia and realize how foolish she was. Akira calmly responded, saying that if he won, she had to promise to stop chasing them. Kirika scoffed, asking if he really believed he could defeat her. Amelia, filled with worry, tried to warn Akira, but he reassured her, saying he knew Kirika was her younger sister, so he wouldn't draw his sword Yatodokami from its sheath. Seeing this, Kirika called him a fool. Both Akira and Kirika stood ready for their duel. Before they started, Akira asked if the surrounding elves were just observers. Kirika confirmed and confidently declared she was ready to kill him, daring him to come at her. In a flash, Akira rushed forward and struck her with his unsheathed sword, knocking her to the ground. She was left in shock, as were all the elves watching. Akira calmly declared his victory and dropped Liam on the ground. He then sat beside Amelia on Yoru, and they began to leave. As they rode away, Kirika, furious, ordered her guards to stop them from escaping. Akira looked back, reminding her that this wasn't what they agreed upon. The guards, refusing to believe Kirika could lose, accused Akira of using some kind of dirty trick and began shooting arrows at them. In response, Akira used his shadow magic to block the arrows, breaking them effortlessly with shadows. The elves were left completely stunned by what they had just witnessed. Lying on the ground, she noticed it was an extra skill, wondering if she had ever seen such a magic that was capable of slaughtering so many people at once, wondering what the hell was that meaning. Suddenly, there was a man in front of them with a wand in his hand. Amelia, with her eyes wide open, looked at him and shouted, "Father." Immediately, Kirika stood up and asked her father why he was there since he was supposed to be on business in a remote region. He replied that he needed to return to the palace and asked her what had happened in his absence. He mentioned that he had been watching for a while and saw her challenge Akira, only to be defeated in a single strike. Despite her defeat, her troops still attacked them from behind, which was disgraceful for someone of the royal family. Kirika hung her head in shame. Angrily, he asked her what she was trying to do to her older sister. Kirika shouted furiously that Amelia was not her sister. In response, her father slapped her across the face in front of everyone. The crowd was shocked. One of the soldiers pointed out that Kirika had treated Amelia horribly. It became clear to their father that she had even used her mesmerization ability on the soldiers. He ordered her to release them from the spell immediately. Afterward, he expressed his disappointment in her actions. Walking over to Amelia, he apologized for not keeping a closer watch on the situation. After that, he turned to Amelia and asked if she really wanted to leave the country with him. Amelia remained silent for a moment, looking sad. He advised her not to leave because she had royal duties to fulfill and asked her to understand that. However, since her freedom was dependent on the outcome of the duel, which Kirika had lost, he had to honor the promise that was made. He then turned to Akira and asked him for another duel. Everyone was shocked, wondering if the king was actually going to fight him. The king said that if Akira won the duel, he would be recognized as king. Akira asked if he wanted to fight him personally, but the king refused and said Kirika would be the one to fight. Kirika looked at him in confusion and shouted that she's already lost once. The king said that Kirika had overestimated her own abilities, which was why she had lost. Now she would fight under his name as she was the strongest elf swordsman. He asked her if she understood, and she acknowledged it. The king told Akira that he was an illegal trespasser in their country. Whether Akira would be allowed to leave or be considered a threat depended on the strength he demonstrated in the duel. The king said he was going back to the palace and ordered everyone to follow him. Akira thought the Elf King was a serious obstacle. It made sense, he thought, because the king was a mysterious figure trying to take his daughter. He looked at Amelia, who had tears in her eyes, feeling that her father didn't really love her. Akira was confused by her reaction. Amelia explained that she was upset because her father had given Kirika a chance for a rematch, but had ignored her own wishes. Amelia pointed out that her father always took Kirika's side. Akira suggested it was because Kirika was naive, but Amelia argued it was because she was an unwanted child. She felt that her parents never wanted her, and that she was a mistake. Akira understood now why Amelia felt this way. When they finally reached the palace, Amelia told Akira that all the ministers, nobles, and servants were under Kirika's mesmerization. Akira acknowledged this. A minister then announced that in the king's name, Kirika and Akira would have a duel. The spectators were all eagerly waiting for the fight. They faced each other, and Akira asked if the king had ordered her to dispel her skill. Annoyed, she asked what he was talking about, noticing that his katana was still sheathed. Akira replied that he had no intentions of using the blade against her. She told him to do as he wished, but warned that this time she would go all out. The king then ordered the fight to begin. As soon as the battle started, Kirika attacked with her sword, and he defended, recognizing her skill in swordsmanship. He firmly gripped his katana and said, "Let's settle this." He pointed his katana at her, and Kirika asked if he really cared about Amelia, as he had agreed to another duel. She smiled and added that only if her father had been kinder to Amelia, things might have been different. As she finished speaking, Kirika began swinging her sword and used her wind magic ability. Akira defended against her attacks with his katana and noticed that her power and speed had increased significantly. Understanding the impact of her wind magic, he decided to take the fight seriously. He activated his shadow magic and charged at her. Their swords collided with great force, causing both of them to stagger back. The king watched in amazement at the power of their clash. Yoru commented that the fight had become interesting, but noted that there was still a difference in their strength. Their swords collided again. Trying to unsettle her, Akira asked why her sword sounded as if she was crying. Kirika smiled and told him to open his eyes, saying that she was actually smiling. He realized she intended to keep that smile on her face and asked her why she hated Amelia so much. She said she was determined to loathe Amelia, and he wondered if it was because she was considered an unwanted child. This seemed to anger Kirika a bit. She explained that the belief about one of the twins being killed was an old superstition. It was true that in the past, elves had a difficult time ensuring that their children lived long lives, and the practice of killing valuable children is abolished in her grandfather's generation. He then asked why she still blamed Amelia for being an unwanted child, wondering if she realized how much it hurt Amelia. She agreed, saying it was ironic because Amelia didn't resemble her parents and was thus thought to be unloved. However, she revealed that Amelia was actually a Miko, a legendary profession believed to be loved by the gods. And after that, she felt that no one had paid attention to her and only cared about Amelia. She was frustrated that Amelia, who was admired for her silver hair and red eyes, seemed to attract everyone's attention while she felt ignored. She wished that the order of their birth could have been reversed so she could have been the one in Amelia's place. Overwhelmed by her emotions, she started crying and told Akira that he didn't understand. As she attacked him, she expressed her anger, saying that both of them had been loved and acknowledged by everyone. Her attacks became faster and harder as she shouted that they had lived freely while she had not, questioning if he could even understand that. Akira focused on dodging her strikes, managing to avoid most of them, but she still managed to land a hit on his arm. Suddenly, Liam shouted for her to stop and begged her to cease hurting herself. He then approached Amelia and apologized for the many mistakes he had made. Both Akira and Kirika stared at him in shock, wondering if he had broken free from the mesmerization. Kirika then pointed out that everyone, including Liam, had focused solely on Amelia, and even he was on her side. Seeing that all the attention was directed at Amelia, she moved towards them and in an instant used her wind ability against them. Akira was stunned by the sudden attack and shouted at Amelia to get down. Just then, Yoru jumped off of Amelia's shoulder and quickly grew to her full size. Yoru shouted for Amelia to duck. With Kirika's powerful wind swirling around, Akira dashed towards her to block the attack and protect Amelia. He managed to shield her from the worst of it. Despite this, the wind continued to rage. Liam handed Amelia some herbs and urged her to use them to help Kirika. Amelia was surprised but threw the herbs into the wind. The king was equally astonished when he realized that the herbs were a holy branch with purification magic. As the holy branch's magic mixed with the wind, everyone felt a noticeable change. Kirika looked around with a sad expression and realized that her mesmerization skill was being dispelled. Akira had broken her sword and approached her, telling her that she had lost. Kirika sat there crying, wondering where she had gone wrong. She felt that Liam was the only one who appreciated her efforts, that he was chosen to be Amelia's fiancé. She didn't want to lose him. She explained that she had used her mesmerization skill on Liam because she didn't want him to be taken away from her. The Elf King was shocked when Kirika's plan was revealed. It was supposed to be Amelia and Liam who would marry, but instead it was announced that Kirika and Liam would be wed. After that, Kirika began to take control of everyone in the castle. Wiping her tears, Kirika admitted that she just wanted to reclaim everything that Amelia had taken away from her. She sadly asked what she had done wrong. Her father walked her over and said she was wrong. He told her that she was mistaken to think that Amelia had taken everything from her. Kirika, frustrated, pointed out that even now, her father was siding with Amelia. Her father, looking angry, grabbed her and told her to listen carefully. He had something important to confess. Kirika was stunned and looked at him in confusion. He revealed that he did love her, but when she was a child, he had stolen one of her memories. He admitted that it wasn't Amelia who took from her, but him. He admitted that he shouldn't have done that and now regretted it. He gently placed his hand on her head and told her to prepare herself, as he was going to restore her bitter memories. Using his skill, Oblivion, he began to bring back her forgotten memories. He placed his hands gently on his daughter and calmly said it was time to erase the memory loss she had. Suddenly, she began to have flashbacks of her childhood. She saw herself as a young girl talking with Liam about special training. Then she saw herself deep inside a dungeon, training to become stronger. While there, she remembered pulling out a jewel that had been given to her by a mysterious man in a cloak. He had told her to use it when she was deep inside the dungeon, so she took out the jewel and used it. Instantly, many large monsters appeared before her. She realized that the monsters on the surface had been too weak for her, and she needed stronger opponents to level up. She started fighting the monsters, but there were too many of them that she knew she had to get out quickly. After killing few of the monsters, she started running back, but suddenly a monster grabbed her leg. She was shocked to see monsters in that part of the dungeon where they weren't supposed to be. More monsters kept coming, and she was running out of energy. She began to panic, wondering what she should do next. Just then, she heard Liam calling her name. She yelled for him to stay away and to get the guards, but Liam told her the guards and their father were already on their way. They just needed to escape. Kiriko replied that at this rate, the monsters would also harm the civilians. Suddenly, a monster was about to attack Kiriko from behind, but Liam jumped in front of her to protect her. The monster pierced through him, and he cried out, telling Kiriko to run. But Kiriko stood frozen, shocked and unable to move. She started crying loudly, overwhelmed with guilt, thinking that it was all her fault. In the present, Kiriko started losing control of her emotions. Her father tried to calm her down, but she couldn't stop crying and shouting, blaming herself for Liam's death. Liam quickly ran over to her, reassuring her that he was alive and right there with her. Kiriko, confused, kept thinking about how she had seen him die. Her father explained that Liam did die at the moment, but when they arrived at the dungeon and saw her in such a deep sorrow, he used his power of oblivion to make her unconscious. It erased those painful memories. Afterward, Amelia used her resurrection magic to bring Liam back to life. Kiriko was shocked to hear this. Her father then added that he didn't even know Amelia had this power at the time. After reviving Liam, Amelia also used her gravity magic to seal the dungeon entrance. She had performed 2 different kinds of magic, both of which were unknown before, created through her magic abilities. Hearing this, Kiriko was stunned. Her father told her that Amelia had done all of this to protect both her and Liam. Kiriko felt embarrassed, realizing that it had been her sister helping her along without her even knowing. Her father then apologized, explaining that he had erased her memories because he feared her fragile heart wouldn't be able to handle such a painful experience. But now he admitted his actions had led her to an even worse fate. He realized that the one with the weak heart was him, because he couldn't bear to see her consumed by madness. As they shared a father-daughter moment, Akira walked over to Amelia and said it was her turn now. He told her she could turn off her world's eye, revealing that this was the reason behind the strange feeling he had when he first met her. He knew she had never turned it off, and he could sense her watching him even when she wasn't looking directly at him. With a reassuring smile, he told her it was okay, and that there was nothing to be afraid of. He encouraged her to go talk to her sister. As Amelia slowly made her way toward Kiriko, she thought to herself how she had always been worried about things she didn't understand. She had never really known what people were thinking or what they expected from her. No matter how they looked at her and smiled, it never made sense to her. That's why until now, she kept increasing the power of her world's eye, trying to find answers through the status window, because deep down, she had always been afraid of everything. After reflecting on all of this, Amelia closed her eyes, thinking it was finally okay. She took a deep breath and deactivated her skill. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Kiriko, who was looking at her with tears in her eyes, and called out to her, "Sister." Seeing Kiriko's tears, Amelia also began to cry. Both of them started crying at the same time, and Kiriko ran towards Amelia, hugging her tightly. Through her sobs, Kiriko apologized for everything she had done, holding her sister close. The 2 sisters hugged each other tightly as Kiriko cried loudly, apologizing over and over again, feeling embarrassed by her actions. Amelia gently cupped Kiriko's face and asked her to let her see it. When Kiriko looked into her eyes, she said she could feel her sister's thoughts. Their father joined them, apologizing to both of them as well. Akira watched the scene with a smile, thinking how this conflict only happened because they had all tried to carry their burdens alone. Watching them, he was reminded of his own mother and his sister, Yui. He recalled telling Amelia about how his father had disappeared 7 years ago and the hardships he and Yui had faced in his absence. Of course, he had been angry, but seeing the three of them now brought back the feelings he had long forgotten. He remembered when he was younger how his father always woke up early in the morning to prepare lunch boxes for him, Yui, and himself. He and Yui were twins, just like Amelia and Kirika, but they had been born on opposite sides of midnight on March 2nd, so they ended up in different school years. Despite this, his father raised both of them while also caring for their sick mother. As Akira thought back, he realized just how much his father had done for them, all without relying on anyone or asking for help. It hit him how much his father had quietly carried on his own. Akira made a promise to himself that if he ever made it back to Japan, he would search for his father, determined to find him and understand more about the man who had given so much. After that, Amelia came back to Akira. Her father apologized to him for the unwelcoming greeting and told him that he would now be an honored guest in the Elf Kingdom. He asked Akira to let them give him a proper welcome. They then prepared a royal dinner just for him, complete with music to celebrate the night. After the dinner, Akira stepped out into the balcony, thinking to himself about the last time he had a full meal. His thoughts drifted back to Amelia and the advice he had given her, that if she was truly scared, she didn't need to pretend to be strong. He realized that he and Amelia were alike in some ways, both frightened by the power they held. He recalled the first time he had activated his own power. His entire vision was suddenly filled with message windows, and in the blink of an eye, he saw the dead bodies of his crew. He suspected that it might have been a demon who killed the hero and his classmates, leaving the world in ruins. Akira wondered if this was the most likely future, a future he desperately wanted to prevent. Whenever he thought of that vision, it felt like a spear pierced through his heart. He knew he had to stop that future from happening no matter what, before he returned to his old world. While thinking about everything, Akira realized he really needed Amelia's resurrection skill, but he wondered if she would leave with him now. Just then, Amelia appeared behind him, noticing him standing there. She stood beside him and said she couldn't find him after dinner, pointing out how hard it had been to track him down. He apologized, explaining that he just wanted to enjoy the night breeze. He then added that he was glad her family had worked things out. She smiled and thanked him, her expression warm. Akira looked at her smile, then closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and asked if she had told the Elven King she planned to leave with him. Amelia nodded, but she pointed out that now, with the reason for leaving gone, and since this was where she truly belonged, he wondered if she still wanted to go. She shushed him and pointed up to the sky, asking him to look at the stars. He agreed, and she told him that every time she saw them, it felt like a blessing. In a quiet voice, she revealed that she wanted to see more of this vast world, together with him. Hearing Amelia's words, Akira was initially shocked but then smiled. She assured him that she would be a great help to him, so she would follow him wherever he went. Akira felt something stirring inside him, and just as he was about to respond, Kirika suddenly appeared and hugged her sister from behind. Kirika said she had been looking everywhere for Amelia. When she noticed Akira, she wondered if she had interrupted their moment. Akira quickly reassured her that it wasn't like that. Amelia then asked Kirika what she wanted, and Kirika told her she wanted to share the bed with them tonight, like they used to a long time ago. Amelia, smiling, pointed out that Kirika was older now, but Kirika replied that she was going far away soon, and she had missed these moments. Akira, standing behind them, encouraged Amelia to go with Kirika, and told him he would stay a bit longer to enjoy the night breeze. Kirika thanked him, and the two sisters left together. Alone again, Akira stood there, still in shock at what he was going to say when Amelia had told him she would follow him. Even he was surprised by his own actions, but deep down, he knew he was happy. As he thought about everything in confusion, he decided that it was getting late and that it was time to sleep. As Akira stood there, conflicted by a mix of emotions, Yoru watched him from a distance behind a tree. He thought to himself that Akira was quite dumb, unsure of his own emotions and feelings. The next day, as they prepared to leave, the king approached Akira. He offered them the option to stay longer if they wanted, but Akira declined, saying he was eager to hurry out. Amelia also reassured her father not to worry, promising she would return. The king stepped closer to Akira and asked him to take good care of Amelia. He mentioned that they had arranged an escort to accompany them to the border. Amelia, trying to lighten the mood, said the king was worrying too much. The king explained that his concerns stemmed from a recent increase in abduction incidents in their country. He had left the castle the previous day to ensure their safety and requested that they allow the guards to escort them. Akira agreed, and with that, they mounted Yoru and set off, accompanied by the guards, leaving the castle behind for their new journey. In Yamato, a receptionist was reviewing the quests a boy had completed and was astonished to see that his party had finished so many quests in such a short time. She asked them to sign a page and told them she would provide details about the promotion later. The party signed the page and discovered they'd finally reached yellow rank. They thought to themselves that the monsters above ground were a bit too weak, and if they could find stronger enemies, they could level up faster. Asahina and a boy accompanying him returned to the town and checked the quest board, but couldn't find any challenging quests because they'd all been completed. One of their crew asked if Asahina had gathered any information about Akira in the town, but he replied that no one knew of an Akira. Tsukasa noted that it seemed Akira hadn't arrived in this country yet. Tsukasa thought to himself that Asahina really wanted to stay in the town, believing that they were more likely to meet Akira there, but now he wondered how they would leave the country. Suddenly, Asahina announced that it was time to leave. Tsukasa was shocked, but Asahina explained that until a few days ago, he had a feeling that Akira would show up. However, he realized that Akira wasn't the type to fall behind, so he had probably moved ahead. Asahina suggested they should head where they needed to go. Tsukasa smiled, relieved that Asahina finally understood. Asahina then spread out a map on the table and explained that staying in the current town wasn't a good idea. He suggested they should move on and take advantage of the port in the country to board a ship and sail to another country. The girls were excited about the idea of traveling by ship, but some of the boys were disappointed because they didn't want to leave behind the Japanese food. Ueno mentioned that she was hoping to rely on Suda for help. She said she enjoyed cooking and was good at it, but preparing traditional food without the right seasonings would be challenging. Waki offered a solution, saying they could stock up on supplies before leaving, and they would gladly carry them. Suda agreed, saying that with the supplies everything would be fine. While looking at the map, Ueno asked Tsukasa where they were heading. Tsukasa explained that he had planned to head to the continent where the Demon King lived, but first he wanted to raise their levels and upgrade their weapons and armor. Waki agreed, noting that their weapons from the palace were worn out and that tamers like him needed to find more partners to grow stronger. Tsukasa added that they needed a place to buy medical supplies as well. At that moment, a man in a cloak appeared and said he knew of such a place. Tsukasa was completely shocked to see him. In the next scene, a girl was deep in the dungeon, fighting and running as she killed monsters. She looked excited and happy, saying to herself how delightful it was to be able to run wild and destroy everything after so long. Our protagonists both sat on Yoru and set off with the soldiers. As they traveled through the forest, she asked him where they were going. He replied that it didn't matter as long as it helped him reach level 100 because his goal was to fulfill Captain Miss Ray's wish. Amelia asked if it was to obtain the legendary extra skill, and he agreed. He thought to himself that in order to prevent the deaths of Tsukasa and the others, which he had seen with his world's eye, he needed to become much stronger. She commented that reaching level 100 seemed like something out of a fairy tale since no one in human history had ever obtained that extra skill. She asked him again if he was truly aiming for that. Akira confirmed he was. She smiled and said she would accompany him. Yoru then asked if he should suggest a destination since they weren't heading anywhere. Akira agreed, and Yoru proposed the continent of beasts called Brute. When asked why, Yoru explained that there are so many skilled blacksmiths among the beastmen, and it would be a good idea to have them examine his sword. Akira agreed as it was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain it on his own. Suddenly, he sent some people nearby. Amelia asked what he meant, and he explained that there were a lot of people just beyond the hill. The soldiers used their binoculars and spotted some kidnappers taking citizens. They rushed to rescue them. Amelia told Akira and Yoru that they should go too. They followed the soldiers and saw them fighting the kidnappers. During the fight, one of the kidnappers grabbed a small girl and threatened not to move. In an instant, Akira grabbed him from behind and told him to drop his weapon or face death. He rescued the girl and kicked the kidnapper away. Another kidnapper asked if Akira didn't know about the blue-class criminal guild named Shark. Akira kicked him and said he hadn't heard of it, then continued to take down more kidnappers. As he unsheathed his sword, the remaining kidnappers fled in the opposite direction, wondering who this powerful fighter was. The commander ordered the officers not to let the kidnappers escape, so they chased after them. He pointed out that there were many of them and that they were part of a blue-class criminal guild. Akira decided to help out and use his shadow magic to capture some of the kidnappers. Suddenly, while running, one of the kidnappers threw a dagger at Amelia. Akira noticed it and quickly used his shadow magic to shatter the dagger into pieces. During this distraction, the remaining kidnappers managed to escape. Akira went to Amelia and asked if she was okay. She nodded and thanked him for protecting her. Yoru commented that even he could have handled the situation alone, but praised Akira for being quite a knight. Amelia noticed the broken dagger on the ground and seemed to recognize the emblem on it. Akira asked her if she had heard of Graham since he had overheard one of the soldiers mention an order from Graham as they were running. Amelia looked confused. Meanwhile, the commander said he believed Uruk, the largest of the Beastmen nations, might have had a chancellor with that name. He thought to himself that this made sense because when he was learning from Miss Ray, he had seen that emblem and the name of the country on a page. One of the soldiers approached and said that they had completed the rescue and captured the kidnappers. Akira looked at them and said that this was as far as they could go. Since there were some injured allies and the kidnappers had been captured, they should head back home. He handed the broken dagger with the emblem to the soldiers, instructing them to take it with them. The commander mentioned that their mission was to escort them out of the forest, and abandoning it now wouldn't be good. Akira clarified that they weren't abandoning it. He climbed a tree to get a better view and informed them that from the port, they would take a boat to Brute. He expressed his gratitude for their escort and their help along the way. As they looked at the coast, Yoru announced that they had finally arrived. They walked out of the port and Yoru explained that this was the only port town in Uruk. Amelia looked around and remarked that this was the Beastman country. When Yoru asked if it was her first time there, she confirmed that it was. Akira reflected on his concerns from the ship. Despite seeing many people doing hard manual labor, he noticed that there were no beastmen among them, only humans. As they walked with a black cat, they received suspicious glances from everyone around them. Akira thought to himself that it was no surprise, given the low opinion he had of humans. Suddenly, some beastmen approached and told him to leave the elf woman and get out of there. Akira sighed, recognizing this was bound to happen. He used his shadow magic to deal with them and began to walk away. The beastmen shouted in confusion as they couldn't see anything. Amelia asked Akira what had happened, and Yoru noticed that they couldn't see through the commotion. Akira explained that things were getting messy, and if they stayed any longer, they would get into trouble. They needed to leave quickly. Amelia was curious, but Akira reassured her that it was nothing and urged her to keep walking. They then approached the receptionist, and Akira asked if they were in the right place for the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist confirmed they were, and asked how she could assist them. Amelia took out a letter and a tag from her purse. The receptionist looked at them with confusion as the tag was an adventurer's gold tag and the letter was an introduction letter. A guildmaster appeared and took the letter from the receptionist. After reading it, he asked if Amelia was the Rose Quartz princess. She confirmed she was. He expressed surprise that her father had sent her there knowing that she would be in danger. Akira asked what he meant. The guildmaster said it seemed that they had arrived without knowing much, so he invited them to follow him and show them something. He also asked Mairi, the receptionist, to get some drinks. Once they were in his office, the guildmaster introduced himself as Ringa, the guildmaster of Uruk. Akira and Amelia introduced themselves as well. Ringa asked if they were there to register as adventurers and get permission to operate. Akira confirmed that they were, and mentioned that he needed to find someone who could repair his weapon. Ringa said he needed to confirm a few things. He asked if Akira was one of the heroes who had come to this world through a hero summoning. Akira remained silent, unsure how to respond. Ringa noted his reaction and mentioned that they had heard about some of the events that had happened in Redis. Akira looked annoyed as he was not comfortable with such discussions. Akira told Ringa that he wasn't a hero, but it was true that he had been summoned. Ringa then asked if he was one of the people who had come with the hero summoning and if he was the Dark Assassin. Akira wondered about this nickname and asked if that was what people were calling him. Ringa seemed a bit puzzled and asked if Akira didn't know that. Akira then asked if the assassin class was common, which made Ringa even more confused. Akira remarked that it seemed unfair for only him to be answering questions, especially since Ringa's class was also assassin. Ringa was surprised by this and confirmed it, explaining that while he was indeed an assassin by class, he was more suited to a desk job as a guildmaster rather than combat. Akira asked Ringa if everyone worked according to their class. Ringa took a sip from his cup and confirmed that it is quite common. He then pointed at Yoru and asked if he was just an ordinary cat. Akira inquired if it was a requirement to reveal that, and Ringa smiled, saying it wasn't mandatory. He explained that people in the land had a strong dislike for black cats due to past events. Ringa suggested that they should be aware of this since they were traveling through the country and invited them to come to the guild if they encountered any trouble. As they left the office, Ringa watched them through the window with a smile, thinking that the Nightmare of Adoria had returned. Amelia mentioned that she had noticed the guildmaster's non-interference skill. Akira agreed, noting that he hadn't detected Ringa's presence even when they were with the receptionist, until Ringa took the letter and began reading it. He thought to himself that it was similar to his own presence concealment skill. Yoru asked what was wrong, and Akira replied that it was nothing. Meanwhile, Ringa, standing behind a wall, overheard their conversation. After leaving the guild, they headed to a hotel for the night. Akira was looking forward to sleeping in a bed for the first time in a long while. The manager showed them to their room, and Amelia noticed the beds were next to each other. Surprised, Akira blushed and apologized, but Amelia reassured him that it was fine and they didn't need separate rooms. Yoru teased Akira through telepathy, suggesting he could sleep outside so Akira and Amelia could have fun. They went out for dinner, and after eating, they returned to their room and laid down on their bed. Amelia commented that she couldn't eat anymore, and Akira remarked that she had overdone it. He thought about how long it had been since he had relaxed like this, feeling constantly under surveillance even in his previous world. Suddenly, Amelia wondered where Yoru was, as he had been dealing with him during dinner. Akira remembered Yoru's comment about sleeping outside and asked him through telepathy if he was serious. Yoru teased him again, saying that he could sense their mood and was happy to sleep outside. Amelia opened the window to let Yoru back in whenever he wanted. She then looked at Akira, saw he was already asleep, and kissed him on the cheek, whispering good night before heading to her own bed to sleep. When they woke up in the morning, Akira and Amelia found themselves on the same bed. Akira looked over at Yoru, who was sitting on the table, and greeted him with a cheerful good morning. To Akira's surprise, Amelia was beside him on the bed. Shocked, he quickly turned to Amelia, who also woke up and said good morning. Yoru, always ready to tease, asked if they had a good night. Yoru then informed them that they needed to get dressed because someone was coming to visit them. Curious about the visitor, they quickly got ready. After getting ready, they sat on the desk waiting for the visitor when the door opened. They were greeted by a man named Sir Crow, the master blacksmith. Yoru explained that Sir Crow was known as the world's best blacksmith and was rumored to have been a member of the previous hero's party. In the next scene, a king stood in his castle, looking up at the roof where a beam of light was coming through. The shadow of the queen could be seen with flowers around her. The king held a bouquet and said, "Sophia." Akira was shocked and asked if Sir Crow was really the world's best blacksmith and a member of the former hero's party. Sir Crow looked at Yoru and mentioned that he never expected to be summoned by the Nightmare of Adoria. Yoru told Sir Crow that he could only trust him with a weapon and left the rest to him. Akira introduced himself and Amelia to Sir Crow, who then asked to see Akira's weapons. Sir Crow remarked that the weapon is in poor condition and had been used roughly in the labyrinth. Akira asked if Sir Crow could repair it, and Sir Crow assured him not to underestimate his skills. However, he warned that gathering the materials needed for the repair would be challenging. Yoru said they would start gathering the money and materials required. Sir Crow took the katana's blade, wrapped it in a cloth, and returned the rest of the equipment to Akira. Sir Crow gave them a list of materials he needed and asked them to call him once they had collected everything. After that, he left and Amelia followed him. Yoru asked Akira if he wasn't going to follow them, but Akira and Amelia might have had something on their mind. He decided to focus on gathering the money and materials to repair his katana. He instructed Yoru to stay with Amelia as they could communicate through telepathy. He asked Yoru to tell Amelia to return before dinner. Yoru agreed and went off to catch up with Amelia. Meanwhile, Amelia ran after Kuro and called out to him. He wondered if she had more business with him. Amelia said she heard he was a member of the former hero's party. She mentioned that the former hero, along with representatives of humans, elves, and beastmen, had tried to defeat the demon lord but failed. Only the hero and the beastmen representative returned. Kuro asked if she had a grudge related to this. Amelia replied that she didn't, but since he survived alongside the hero, she wanted him to teach her how to fight. As he walked through the town, Akira noticed that no one paid him any attention since he was alone. It felt peaceful. He then went to the receptionist and asked how to get registered. She handed him a form and asked if he knew how to write. He started filling out the form, realizing that she didn't seem to remember him. After completing the form, he gave it to her. She reviewed it and said it looked fine, then gave him a gray rank dog tag. She explained that he would start as a first rank adventurer and told him about the different ranks. She reminded him to keep the tag safe as it also served as an ID. She then asked if he needed any more information. Akira asked about accessing the labyrinth. The receptionist explained that entry to the labyrinth was limited by rank and that he needed to become a yellow rank adventurer first. She told him that the labyrinth here was more challenging compared to those in the continent or forest. The monsters were weak to physical attacks but didn't have any obvious weak points. Akira thought this would be great training for learning to fight flexibly. He mentioned that he was confident in his skills and felt ready. The receptionist warned him that many new adventurers had said the same thing and ended up losing their lives. She suggested that he prove his skills by advancing to yellow rank first and then they could discuss it further. While Kuro worked at his workshop, Amelia sat nearby, watching him. He asked how long she planned to stay there and she said she would stay until he agreed to train her. Kuro told her that he had no intention of taking on a disciple. He mentioned that many had come to him for training before, but none stayed after experiencing his methods. He also said that as a princess, she was unlikely to endure it. Amelia responded that she was ready and revealed she was a silver rank adventurer, though she acknowledged that Kuro was stronger than her. Kuro asked Yoru how he could make her give up, and Yoru replied that she was incredibly stubborn and could endure more than anyone. Kuro said that only the strong survive in this world, and that there was a level she might never reach. Amelia insisted that she wanted to seize her chance and follow Akira's example. She wanted to become stronger so she could fight alongside him. As the sun was setting, Amelia was still standing there, waiting. Kuro noticed her and seeing her determination, she approached him and begged him to teach her. Kuro looked at her with annoyance but told her that some things are impossible to change. Yoru mentioned to Amelia that this would be a test of endurance. Suddenly, Amelia caught a smell of something. At that moment, Yoru received a message from his master saying it was dinner time. They quickly headed back to the hotel. Akira smiled and reminded them that he had asked them to return in time for dinner. Both Amelia and Yoru apologized, with Amelia promising it wouldn't happen again and asking for forgiveness. Yoru mentioned that Amelia's legs were too tired to continue. Akira reassured them that it was fine but thought to himself that he might have pushed them a bit too hard. Although he believed that they were strong enough to handle themselves, he was still concerned about them wandering around after dark. She told Akira she understood the importance of curfew and would remember it from now on. He warned her to be careful since her legs looked like they were asleep. Amelia admitted that her legs were really sore and she couldn't stand properly. After dinner, Akira mentioned that he needed to get to yellow rank as soon as possible and planned to focus on that the next day. Amelia asked if she could order more food, and Akira wondered how many servings she had already had. The next day, Kuro was working when he saw Amelia and Yoru approaching him again. Amelia greeted him with a good morning, but Kuro ignored her. She begged him once more to teach her how to fight. Yoru sat on a log, watching the scene unfold. Kuro then handed Amelia a bucket filled with water, which confused her and shocked Yoru. He placed a bowl of fruit on top of the bucket and told her to prepare dinner for him. He instructed her to use the kitchen as she pleased while he continued working in his workshop. She changed her dress and began using the knife. Since she didn't know how to cut vegetables, Yoru gave her instructions. As they cooked, Yoru praised her progress, saying she'd get really good in no time. Amelia commented that it was because she had a great teacher. While chopping tomatoes, Amelia asked Yoru why Kuro called him the Nightmare of Adoria. Yoru explained that it was a long story. He told her that 100 years ago, under the orders of the Demon Lord, he had attacked the capital of this land, Adoria. During the attack, his beast side went out of control, causing much more damage than he had intended. The destruction was so severe that the beastmen started calling him the Nightmare of Adoria. Yoru added that a monument was later erected on a hill to commemorate the event. He mentioned that he wasn't sure how to feel about it, but when he visited the monument, he noticed that someone was there. He looked at the flowers and wondered if the family had lost someone dear. He thought it might be better to visit another time. However, the man then asked him if he was the Nightmare of Adoria, which shocked him. The man explained that he couldn't hide with that amount of mana. He revealed that he had been under the Demon Lord's care at the castle. Yoru, upon seeing the man's face, remembered him as the beastman who had escaped with the hero back then. He asked Yoru if he had any regrets, given that he was already known as the Nightmare of Adoria. Yoru saw Kuro kneeling with flowers and remarked that it seemed like someone had passed away. wondering if Kuro was trying to get revenge. Kuro explained that his little sister wasn't killed by Yoru but by a fellow beastman who was a member of the royalty. He revealed that on the day Adoria was hit by the disaster, ships and carriages were used to rescue people. If that beastman had acted differently, his sister could have been saved. Instead, the beastman left her behind, saying that since her brother was part of the hero's party, she should have asked him for help. Kuro had heard this from a sailor who witnessed the event, and he was frustrated because the royals were supposed to protect the people. Kuro said that there was no way Yoru could have helped because he was in Uruk, far to the south, while Adoria was far to the north. He explained that his little sister had been crushed by a collapsing building and died. Yoru said he wouldn't apologize, and Kuro replied that he knew and wasn't expecting an apology. Kuro said that Yoru had only done his duty as the right hand of the demon lord. The war had escalated, and the terrible deeds of the vicious black cat monster became part of Beastman history, earning Yoru the title of Nightmare. However, Kuro believed that the real person he should seek revenge against was Graham Cluster, a member of the royal family, who he felt was more responsible for his sister's death. Akira brought all the completed requests to the receptionist, who was surprised to see that he had finished them all in just one afternoon. She noted that at his rank he was only supposed to handle simple, low-level jobs. She was especially impressed when she saw that he even managed to get a stamp from the old man, who always found excuses to avoid it. Akira had helped him with some shopping and a shoulder massage, and the old man had stamped the request without any fuss. The old man had even left a note saying, "Please send this guy next time as well." The receptionist said that the old man really liked Akira. Looking at all the requests with stamps, she was amazed. She confirmed that Akira had met all the requirements for promotion and agreed to upgrade his rank to yellow. She told him it usually took several days to complete all these tasks, but he had done it so quickly. Akira mentioned that he would now head to the labyrinth and said he enjoyed doing these jobs. He asked her to set aside any future requests for him and then left. As he watched him, she muttered, "The Messiah of Aobs." Akira noticed that since the labyrinth entrance was located within the city, the guild was closely monitoring it. However, he had a sense that something was off and that it might be more dangerous than usual. Despite making money by defeating monsters in the labyrinth and collecting some ingredients, he decided to have lunch first. Suddenly, some adventurers ran back, shouting that monsters were coming. They were alarmed by the presence of high-level monsters on such a low floor, and rushed off to inform the guildmaster. Meanwhile, a girl was laughing loudly, thanking the adventurers for showing her the way to the exit. She was excited about the idea of playing a game of chase all the way out of the labyrinth. As Amelia set the dinner table, she asked Yoru if what happened 100 years ago was true. Yoru confirmed it, saying he hadn't seen Kuro since that day. However, he knew that Kuro lived in Uruk, working as a blacksmith, and was regarded as one of the most skilled blacksmiths in the world. She asked if that was the reason they had come to Kuro to get Akira's sword repaired, and also wondered if Kuro looked the same 100 years ago. Yoru agreed, saying that Kuro barely changed at all. Amelia remarked that she had heard beastmen live much longer than humans, but was still surprised that Kuro looked so young. Yoru explained that it was related to how much mana they possessed. Those with more mana age more slowly in appearance. Amelia recalled hearing about a beastman from a previous hero's party whose mana rivaled that of demons and guessed that it must be Kuro. Yoru confirmed, saying Kuro had an extraordinary amount of mana and was indeed special. Amelia then asked what made Kuro so special. Suddenly, Kuro opened the door and walked in. He apologized, saying that she must not be used to this kind of situation. Sitting down at the table, he expressed his gratitude for the meal. Amelia stood there, waiting, but he asked her to sit and eat with him. She tasted the food and felt relieved that it turned out well. While they were eating, Kuro brought up Akira, mentioning that he never thought that the Nightmare of Adoria would call someone master. Yoru, while eating, quickly corrected him, asking not to be called that and introducing himself as Yoru. Kuro then turned to Amelia and asked about Akira again, reminding her that she had mentioned wanting to become stronger, to fight alongside him. He asked her once more what kind of person Akira was. After finishing their conversation at the dinner table, they started doing the dishes. Kuro thanked Amelia for helping, and she asked if she could talk to him about something. He said it was fine and asked what she wanted to know. Amelia then asked him about his sister, which left him shocked and silent. She gently asked if he had gotten revenge for her. He replied, "Not yet," and explained that the man who killed his sister, Graham, the nephew of the current king, was still alive. Amelia, surprised, asked why he hadn't done anything if he had sworn revenge. Yoru was taken aback by this bitter side of Amelia. Kuro then admitted that he did want to kill Graham, but he believed his sister wouldn't have wanted that since she was too kind-hearted. Amelia said that if it had been her, she would have wanted him to take revenge no matter what. Angrily, Kuro snapped back, asking, "And who are you to say that?" Suddenly, Kuro felt a strange presence behind him, but he couldn't quite catch it. However, Amelia noticed something and he saw the change in her eyes. Curious, he asked if she had some special ability, suspecting she had the power to sense something that he couldn't. She pressed her to explain what she saw, but Amelia refused, saying it wasn't something he wanted to know. However, she did offer him some advice, to stop using his little sister as an excuse, telling him that it was pointless. Kuro, brushing it off, simply said that the food was delicious and told her she could leave. Amelia bowed respectfully and closed the door as she left. As she walked away with Yoru, he asked if what she said to Kuro was alright. Amelia reassured him, saying that even if someone like Kuro, stuck in his own sadness, taught her something, it wouldn't be of any use to Akira. She mentioned that despite Kuro's appearance, he was kind, but he needed time to process things. Yoru agreed with her. Suddenly, they both felt a strong gust of wind coming from the direction of the labyrinth. Meanwhile, Akira sprinted toward the monsters in the dungeon. The adventurers who saw him rushing in wondered what he was doing. As Akira dashed forward, he finally realized why he had felt something was off. It was the very faint activation of his danger sense. Both Yoru and Amelia, along with Akira, were taken aback by this sudden feeling. However, Akira knew something was approaching, and he was ready for it. The adventurers rushed through the dungeon's exit, alarming the soldiers stationed at the gate. The soldiers asked what was wrong, and the adventurers explained that the monsters from the deeper levels were emerging. Suddenly, the dungeon entrance shattered, and countless monsters poured out. Chaos ensued as the soldiers called for reinforcements from the guild and tried to hold the monsters back while ordering civilians to flee. Terrified civilians witnessing the scene were reminded of the nightmare from 100 years ago. Just then, a monster appeared to attack at a civilian, but Akira appeared out of nowhere and swiftly killed it, saving the person. He contacted Yoru, who said that Amelia would focus on evacuating the citizens. Akira said he would handle the monsters near the dungeon entrance and assured Yoru that Amelia was safe with him. At that moment, a boy approached and asked if Akira was a new adventurer. He informed Akira that the defenses were failing and monsters had started moving into town. The boy mentioned an emergency summon for adventurers of yellow rank or above and asked Akira to come with him. They both ran together and the boy explained that they were being split into squads for large battles and that a raid was being organized. Meanwhile, the town was in chaos with monsters everywhere. People were running around, terrified and panicked. Amelia appeared and rescued some people who were being attacked by flying monsters. She told them to move quickly and assured them that she was there to help. The people were shocked and wondered if she was the nightmare of Adorio, which angered Yoru. He told them not to call him that name while holding them in his mouth and save them from the monsters. He introduced himself as Yoru. Ringa ordered the gray and blue ranks to protect the citizens while they evacuated. He instructed the yellow ranks and above to pair up with whoever was closest to them and said that they could form larger groups if they felt unsure. The boy asked if Akira could team up with him. He introduced himself as Senna, the younger brother of the guildmaster Ringa. Akira introduced himself in return and thought he now had more reason to stay alert, realizing he was paired with Ringa's brother and feeling he might have ended up with a troublesome partner. Senna asked Akira how he fought, and Akira explained that he was an assassin. Senna said he was a rear guard and a flame mage. Ringa then asked if all the groups were formed because the orders had already been sent to the surrounding cities and the capital. He said reinforcements would arrive soon and that they needed to protect the city, shouting to not let the demons take over. Akira was shocked to hear that the monsters were controlled by demons. He was worried because this was a situation where he couldn't rely on his own guesses. Ringa appeared and saw Senna with Akira. He said he would support the Silver Squad and that he would be with Red Squad. Senna asked about Akira since he was a yellow rank, but Ringa smirked and told him not to worry. Akira said he had no problems with the orders, and then they all started running. There were many monsters around and a boy was already there using his powers to fight them. Akira quickly joined in, using his own abilities to help take down the monsters. Together they fought fiercely and defeated many. During the battle, Akira noticed a dagger lying beside an injured soldier. He asked the soldier if he could borrow it, explaining that he didn't have his own weapon with him. The soldier agreed, telling Akira to return it after he was done, and mentioned that the dagger had been crafted by Kuro. Afterward, Akira moved on, heading toward the remaining monsters. He thought to himself that working alone was easier. As he took his first swing with the borrowed dagger, he realized how magnificent the blade was. He noticed the soldier's name on the weapon and thought it was great since he could gather new materials without needing to go deeper into the dungeon. Soon, several flying monsters came toward him, but with quick use of his shadow magic, Akira wiped them all out instantly. The boy from earlier came running up, and Akira wondered what was wrong. The boy explained that he had seen the flying monsters coming and rushed over to help, but now they were gone. With a serious face, Akira joked that he had eaten them all. The boy laughed, calling Akira a funny guy. The boy then mentioned that the area seemed cleared, but added that he heard there was trouble with an Earthrock dragon on the west side. He suggested they head over there, and Akira agreed. Yoru and Amelia were busy rescuing civilians, all the while keeping an eye on the labyrinth. Amelia mentioned that she would stay behind since there were no adventurers around, and monsters might appear. Just as she predicted, a monster emerged. She ordered Yoru to hurry ahead, assuring him that she could handle herself for a while. Using her gravity magic, she quickly defeated the monster. However, more monsters started appearing, and suddenly a boy stood atop one of them. He mentioned that a spell had brought him back and asked if she was the elf princess he remembered from before. He laughed, and Amelia began to wonder if he was a demon. The boy removed his cloak, introducing himself as Alum Tress. He said he remembered her well. Although he wasn't ordered to kill her, her magic was definitely troublesome. With a smirk, he told her that he planned to disable her powers. She was shocked to hear this as she looked around, realizing that the area was completely surrounded by monsters, leaving her no way to escape. Alum Tress taunted her, saying that the assassin who was with her could be killed next, as the Demon Lord had ordered it. He admitted that even he couldn't stand that guy either. He told her to do her best to survive or she wouldn't be able to protect him. Then he asked about her trump card, her revival magic. Just as she was about to use her ability, monsters suddenly attacked, stabbing her and piercing through her body. When Yoru returned, he saw her blood but couldn't find her anywhere. Panicked, he immediately contacted Akira and told him that Amelia had been kidnapped. Akira rushed to Yoru as soon as he heard that Amelia had been kidnapped. He ran as fast as he could and reached Yoru, asking angrily what had happened. Yoru explained that Amelia had stayed behind alone to distract the monsters, and when he returned, she was gone. Akira examined the blood and confirmed that it was definitely Amelia's. Yoru mentioned that he didn't know much more, but noted that the mana he sensed wasn't Amelia's, and it was familiar but different. He identified it as belonging to Alum Tress, the third strongest demon under the Demon King. Akira asked Yoru if he could track their scent, but Yoru said that with his current strength, he wasn't a match for Alum Tress. Akira started walking, saying it didn't matter, and they were going to chase them anyway. Akira noticed that shadow magic and bloodlust were spreading around him. He used his ability to transform himself, and said he could now sense mana more clearly. He identified that the mana was coming from the entrance of the dungeon, leading him to wonder if Alum was responsible for the monsters pouring out of the labyrinth. Yoru mentioned that he couldn't answer complex questions after transforming because it made him go berserk, so Akira simply ordered him to find Alum, and they both jumped towards the labyrinth. Meanwhile, the boy wondered where Akira had gone since they were fighting together earlier. They noticed that the monsters were returning to the dungeon. At first, they were puzzled about why so many flying monsters were gathering there. Soon, they realized that the monsters were actually moving towards the east of the dungeon. This was because Akira and Yoru were heading that way, killing the monsters in their path. Akira continued to kill monsters without stopping while running towards the labyrinth. Suddenly, Yoru transformed back into his normal form. He wondered what had happened, and if his master's anger had affected his technique. Now that he was back to his senses, Yoru sensed that it was all a trap. He called out to Akira to warn him, but Akira replied that he didn't care if it was a trap. He was determined to crush anything in his way until he found Amelia. Suddenly, a massive monster appeared, and Akira charged at it, jumping into the air for a strike. Yoru realized this wouldn't end well, but Akira somehow lost his sword mid-air. As he was falling into the monster's mouth, he remembered Miss Ray's words about his lack of skill on one-on-many fights and the fatal flaws in his shadow magic. Despite this, Akira was determined not to lose anyone again. He activated his Shadow Hell ability, creating a massive black hole that sucked the monster inside. After using such a powerful ability, Akira felt himself becoming unconscious mid-air. Yoru flew just in time to catch him, noticing that Akira's mana had been completely depleted and he was entirely unconscious. Deep in the labyrinth, Amelia suddenly opened her eyes and wondered where she was. As she half opened her eyes, she saw a blurry figure in front of her. She remembered she was dying and with her last breath had cast revival on herself. Alum, the boy in front of her, noticed she was awake and told her that she couldn't even lift a finger. He said it would take her a few days to recover because all her mana was drained from casting Revival. He asked if it wasn't the same in the dungeon forest. Amelia realized that they had thoroughly researched her situation and understood that everything was part of Alam's plan. He told her not to look so scared and asked where she thought he was taking her. Amelia asked him and he replied that they were going to the depths of the labyrinth. The second superior demon would use a magic circle to meet them there. Amelia was surprised that even someone as powerful as Alam had superiors who were even stronger. She guessed that the second might be some kind of expert in magic circles, as they must be able to teleport from the demon continent to the south of the beastman continent. Alam mentioned that they had plenty of time and asked her about herself. He wondered if she had a little sister and what kind of person she was. Amelia revealed that she was once strong but had become quite fragile recently. Alam wondered how that could be. She explained that as an elf, she was trained to fight with a bow, but she always stood in the front line with a sword to protect her comrades. Alam was puzzled by how that made her fragile. Amelia told him that her jealousy was the issue. She had always bottled up her emotions and thoughts, trying to be strong, but eventually she reached her limit. Her sister, on the other hand, could let her feelings out, which made Amelia even more fragile and weak by comparison. Alam was confused by this explanation, but Amelia continued, saying that her jealousy had made her more fragile because she could never express her emotions freely like her sister could. He smiled and acknowledged her feelings, then said it was his turn to share. With a huge smile on his face, he opened his arms and talked about his little sister, Loon. He said she was the best at controlling monsters among demons, and he loved her very much. However, she used to ignore him, and he thought she was tired of him, so he endured in his sadness and left her alone. Now, he was shocked that she barely left his side because he had always thought she hated him. Amelia was surprised to hear this. She had thought that demons were very different from humans and didn't have families to love. She didn't expect them to have feelings. She asked Alam if all demons smiled like he did. He looked at her in confusion and said that his sister never smiles, nor does the demon lord, and Silas always stays angry. Amelia realized that Alam was revealing bits of information, not because he was foolish, but because he was confident that she wouldn't return to Akira. Alam then came close to Amelia and told her that it was time to pick up the pace. He said her companions would be chasing after her by now, but it might take them several days to reach her. He pointed out that it would be hard for her to pass the time without seeing the sun, so he used his magic to make her fall asleep for a bit longer. Meanwhile, Akira finally woke up and found himself in a bed. Yoru was beside him and noticed that Akira was awake. Akira wondered where he was and suddenly remembered Amelia. He sat up in shock, but Kuro told him that they were in his workshop. Akira felt dizzy, and Yoru advised him not to move until his mana had recovered. Yoru explained that Akira had used all his shadow magic and had completely run out of mana, so Yoru carried him to safety. Concerned about the danger, Akira activated healing and used his reserves to restore his mana. Kuro then set some food on the table for Akira and told him to focus on recovering. He mentioned that Akira's recovery was surprisingly fast, as it normally took much longer for someone to return to normal after running out of mana. Akira was shocked to hear that he had been unconscious for 3 days. Yoru confirmed this, saying that Akira had been in a coma for that time. Akira asked about Amelia, and Kuro said that until then, he was far from perfect. He advised Akira to rest for a few more days if he wanted to have any chance of saving Amelia. Kuro called him Silent Assassin, which puzzled Akira. Kuro explained that stories of Akira's exploits were spreading throughout Europe. He noted that a yellow-rank adventurer who had just arrived from another continent had managed to eradicate all of the monsters from the dungeon, including the rock dragon, using his dark magic. Akira was speechless and had no words to say. Kuro then showed him a weapon and mentioned that someone had given it to him. Akira explained that he had borrowed the weapon and recognized it as the sword he had left behind. Kuro knew it was the sword he had forged and also knew the owner. Akira thanked him and asked him to thank the owner as well. Kuro then handed Akira his katana. When Akira opened the cover, he saw that it was split into 2 short swords. Kuro said that short swords were more suitable for an assassin. Akira raised the swords and saw that they were completely black, even darker than black. Kuro also gave Akira a ring. Akira noticed that it also had the inscription, "I'll lead you everywhere." Kuro was surprised that Akira could read it. Akira explained that it wasn't the language of this country, but from the world he came from. Yoru added that the ring belonged to the past hero and was a national treasure. He asked Kuro why he had it. Kuro said he had helped a stranger without knowing their name, and in return the stranger gave him the ring. He explained that the ring had the power to guide the wearer to anything they wished for. Akira thought this might help him find Amelia. Yoru and Akira went into the town and looked at the ring, which indicated that Amelia was straight below them. Yoru confirmed that she had been taken into the dungeon. When Akira asked about the name Silent Assassin, Kuro wondered if he liked it. Akira said no, as it reminded him of something the guildmaster had said before the raid began: "Don't let the demons run their city." Kuro was shocked to hear that the guildmaster mentioned demons. Akira confirmed that demons appeared with all of them in the city and kidnapped Amelia. He noted that Kuro should not have known about the demons attacking when the raid began. Kuro asked if that was why Akira was suspicious of him. Akira explained that both Kuro and his brother seemed a bit suspicious. He mentioned that despite being a yellow rank, he was sent to the front line with Senna, which he found odd. He said Amelia was focused on evacuating people while they were fighting the monsters. However, he felt that Ringa had orchestrated the battlefield, leading to the current situation. Kuro understood that Akira suspected Ringa was working with the demons. Akira agreed and suggested they look into Ringa and Kuro. He asked Kuro to keep this information secret and not to inform the guild about their suspicions. After their conversation, Yoru and Akira managed to sneak into the labyrinth by avoiding the soldiers. Inside, they were shocked to see a girl in a cloak. They were taken aback and wondered who she was. When she spoke, Yoru recognized it as a woman's voice, and Akira realized he knew her. She was the same girl who had glared at the parade in Ritus. The girl, noticing Akira, asked if he was there too. Clenching her hands, she said it didn't matter and requested to join them. Yoru, frustrated, said there was no way they could trust her, and that they were too busy to protect her. She then revealed her identity, introducing herself as Leah Lagoon, the first princess of Urk. Akira and Yoru were both shocked to hear that. Yoru asked why the princess was in such a place. Leah explained that she wanted to speak with the elven princess Amelia. Upon hearing this, Akira quickly moved towards her and placed his sword at her throat. He demanded to know how she knew Amelia was in the dungeon. Akira warned her that he had already been through a lot, and the only person he trusted right now was Amelia. He made it clear that he wouldn't hesitate to kill her depending on her answer. Leah, though weak, insisted she could protect herself. She said she knew Amelia was in danger and was trying to help. Akira, however, told her she still hadn't answered his question and demanded again how she knew Amelia was here. Leah explained that she used her skill, boosted olfaction, to track Amelia's scent, as well as another scent, but she lost it when she entered the labyrinth. Akira checked her stats and realized she was telling the truth. However, he found it odd that her Royal Grace skill was listed last, whereas on Amelia's stats it was listed first. He asked her if she wasn't born royal, and she was surprised by his knowledge. Akira then told her to move on. Yoru questioned whether it was wise to trust her. While Yoru agreed that Leah wasn't lying, he still felt that there was no reason to fully trust her. He mentioned that she knew that they were already there and had many questions to answer, but since they were short on time, he would ask them on the way. He asked her if she was prepared for this, and she replied that she had come because she wanted to tell Amelia something. As they moved deeper to the labyrinth, Akira noticed the dungeon had a unique layout. He asked Leah if she was familiar with the place, but she said she only knew a little about it. She explained that the dungeon had boss rooms every 10 floors and was very vertical, with huge drops and filled with towers and bridges in every direction. There were many different routes, making it easy to get lost. Yoru asked if they couldn't just jump to the last floor, given how easy it was to get lost. Leah explained that many rookie adventurers tried that and ended up climbing down ropes, but it was difficult because of the many flying monsters in the dungeon. While talking, Akira tried to fight off the flying monsters attacking them. He noted that people often underestimated the dungeon's difficulty because of the variety of monsters, and it was a good place to test their adaptability. Akira then ordered Yoru to move quickly and hurry to find Amelia. Yoru said they shouldn't waste time with minor threats and suggested they go straight to the bottom of the dungeon. Leah increased her speed and started descending rapidly. Akira introduced himself and told her he would listen, but asked her to be cautious for now. Leah explained that she wanted to tell Amelia about the demons pursuing her because of her special skill, revival magic. She asked why Amelia was in the dungeon and asked about the other scent she detected. Leah noted that both scents were related to Amelia, but the other one was different. Akira revealed that the other scent belonged to a demon named Olim. Leah worried that she might be too late. Yoru reassured her not to jinx it and that they would make it in time. Akira asked why the demons were interested in Amelia's skills and what their goal was. Leah said that she wasn't completely sure but believed that the demon lord was finally making a move. She explained that the monster attacks were a declaration of war. Akira asked about the demon lord's goals. Yoru said she couldn't say exactly what was on the demon lord's mind, but he knew that revenge against other races who forced demons to the volcanic continent had been a long-standing desire since the first demon lord. Yoru mentioned that there had been an unusual demon lord among the ages who actually despised conflict and sought to sign a peace treaty. Akira was surprised to hear this. Yoru explained that this demon lord was quite different. He loved his wife and child and genuinely wanted peace. He worked hard to collaborate with humans, elves, and beastmen. Just as they were about to sign a peace treaty, a beastman who despised demons and was obsessed with becoming a hero killed the demon lord's wife. Enraged, the demon lord withdrew from the negotiations and destroyed 2 beastmen's cities. Yoru wanted Akira to understand that the idea of demons being evil was just one perspective. Leah was saddened to hear this and said she had no idea that such a terrible event had occurred. Leah then explained that according to beastman history, the peace treaty proposed by the demon lord was seen as a trap. They had trusted the demon lord only to be betrayed and lose 2 cities in the process. Akira said it was too early to decide which side's story was correct, as stories could be manipulated by time, power, and purpose. He stated that if he had to believe any story, he would need to see it for himself. For now, their priority was saving Amelia, who was in danger. He told Yoru if the situation was orchestrated on the demon lord's orders, he would not forgive them. Yoru agreed, understanding the seriousness of the situation. They suddenly reached the boss floor and entered it. Leah explained that defeating the boss was the only way to proceed deeper into the dungeon. Just as she shouted to look at the boss, Akira used shadow magic and quickly defeated it. Leah was shocked by the display of power. Akira pointed out that it was the 97th floor and they needed to hurry. Leah mentioned that the dungeon felt different from the last 2 floors, and she could sense Amelia's presence more strongly. Yoru confirmed that they were getting close. Leah noted how easily Akira had defeated the bosses and wondered who he was. Akira replied that he was an assassin who had been summoned by accident. Leah then asked if he was one of the heroes. Akira recalled her comments during the parade about sacrifices for summoning heroes and asked her what she meant. Leah, looking sad, began to explain, but suddenly Yoru pointed out a boy standing in front of them. Yoru leapt towards the boy to attack, but the boy easily dodged and smiled, saying he had arrived sooner than expected. He mentioned that he thought he would have returned home before they caught up with him. With a confident smile, he said now that they'd found him, he would take them on. Well, folks, the latest episode of the manga ends here, but we have a lot of interesting titles you should check out. Don't forget to click like and subscribe for more videos like these.